Hey, welcome to Scary Stories Told in the Rain. So let's start with something that happened to a woman named Sarah in Chicago. She was 26, living alone in a studio apartment in Wicker Park, one of those old buildings with thin walls and doors that don't quite fit their frames. You know the type. Sarah worked night shifts as a nurse, so her sleep schedule was all over the place. She'd get home around 1 in the morning, unwind for an hour, and usually fall asleep around 3. About 2 weeks after moving in, she heard a knock on her door. Not unusual, right? Except it was 2:47 inches the morning, and it wasn't a normal knock. It was a pattern. 3 slow knocks, pause, 2 quick knocks, pause, 1 knock. Sarah looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. She didn't open the door. She's not stupid, but she did feel uneasy enough that she couldn't fall asleep until sunrise. The next night, same thing. 2:47 a.m. 3 slow, 2 quick, 1 final knock. She looked through the peephole again. Nothing. Just the flickering hallway light and that stained carpet that probably hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. This continued for a week, every single night. Same time, same pattern. She stopped looking through the peephole because, honestly, what was the point? Nobody was ever there. Sarah mentioned it to her neighbor across the hall, a grad student named Marcus. He hadn't heard anything, didn't even wake up at that hour. She asked the building manager, who seemed annoyed and said it was probably someone pranking her, but he'd look into it. Nothing changed. After 2 weeks of this, Sarah started timing it. She'd lie in bed, phone in hand, watching the clock. 2:46, 2:47. Like clockwork, the knocking would start. 3 slow, 2 quick, 1. She tried everything. White noise machines, earplugs. She even stayed at a friend's place one night, but she felt guilty about imposing, so she went back home. Then, on the 17th night, something changed. She was lying in bed at 2:46, waiting, because by now it was like waiting for a bus you knew was coming. 2:47 hit. Silence. No knock. Sarah felt a weird mix of relief and disappointment. Maybe it was finally over. Maybe whoever was doing this got bored. She closed her eyes, started to drift off, and then she heard it. 3 slow knocks, 2 quick knocks, 1 knock. But it wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from inside her closet. Sarah didn't move. She didn't breathe. She just stared at the closet door, the one she always kept closed because the sliding mechanism was broken and it would creak open on its own if she didn't latch it. It was latched. The knocking came again. Same pattern. 3, 2, 1. From behind the closet door. She grabbed her phone and called 911, whispered the situation, stayed on the line while 2 officers made their way to her building. When they arrived, they checked the closet. Empty. Just her clothes and some storage boxes. They checked the walls, thinking maybe sound was traveling weird through the building's old pipes or vents. Nothing unusual. One officer told her it was probably just the building settling. Old places make weird noises. But Sarah knew what she heard, and she knew it wasn't the building. She moved out 3 days later, broke her lease, didn't even try to get her deposit back. The thing is, before she left, she talked to Marcus one last time, asked him if he'd heard anything strange lately. He said no. But then he mentioned something weird. For the past 2 weeks, someone had been knocking on his door every night at 2:47 a.m. 3 slow knocks, 2 quick knocks, 1 knock. He'd stopped answering after the first few nights. Let's move on to the next story. This one comes from a guy named David in Brooklyn, Crown Heights, to be specific. He moved into a rent-stabilized building in 2019, one of those beautiful old brownstone conversions with high ceilings and original molding. The kind of place that felt like a deal too good to be true. David lived in apartment 4C, 4th floor, C unit. The building had a simple layout. 5 apartments per floor, labeled A through E. Ground floor to 6th floor, 30 apartments total. Easy to navigate. Hard to get lost. About a month after moving in, David started getting mail that wasn't his. Not junk mail. Real mail. utility bills, bank statements, a magazine subscription to Times National Geographic *, all addressed to a Terence Howell, apartment 7 Farads. David figured it was a mistake. Maybe Terence used to live in the building and forgot to update his address. He wrote, "Return to sender, wrong address," on the envelopes and left them in the outgoing mail. But the mail kept coming, week after week. More bills, a birthday card from someone named Aunt Lily, a package from Amazon. David asked the mailman about it. The mailman, an older guy named Richie who'd been delivering to the neighborhood for 20 years, just shrugged and said, "I deliver what the system tells me to deliver. If it says 7 Farads, I put it in 7 Farads mailbox." But here's the thing, there was no 7 Farads mailbox. David checked. The mailboxes in the lobby went up to 6E, 30 boxes total. So where was this mail ending up? David started paying closer attention. He realized the mail for 7 Farads was being shoved into a narrow gap between the mailboxes and the wall, a little space that wasn't technically a slot, just a mistake in the building's construction. Someone had been collecting the mail from that gap. The envelopes were always gone within a day or two. David mentioned it to his upstairs neighbor, a woman in her 60s named Lorraine who'd lived in the building since the 80s. When he said, "Apartment 7 Farads," Lorraine's face went pale. She told him not to worry about it. Just throw the mail away. Don't ask questions. But of course, David asked questions. He started with the building's super, a guy named Freddie. Freddie was evasive, said he didn't know anything about a 7 Farads, said maybe it was an old clerical error in the postal system. David didn't buy it. He went to the city records, pulled up the building's original layout from 1904. Sure enough, the building was designed with 6 floors, 5 apartments each, no 7 Farads. But then he found something strange. There was a second layout, filed in 1947. It showed a 7th floor, and on that floor, 5 apartments, 7 amperes through 7E, no 7 Farads. But in the margin of the blueprint, someone had handwritten in pencil, 7 Farads, storage access only, do not lease. David went back to the building, looked at it from the outside, counted the floors. 6 floors. There was no 7th floor. At least, not from the street. David became obsessed. He started exploring the building's stairwells, the ones tenants rarely used because everyone took the elevator. The main staircase went from the ground floor to the 6th floor, normal, but there was a second staircase in the back of the building, near the old service entrance. It was narrow, poorly lit, and smelled like mildew. David climbed it one afternoon. Ground floor, 2nd floor, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and then another landing. The stairs kept going. There was a door at the top, painted the same industrial gray as all the other floor doors. But this one had no number, no label, just a door. David tried the handle, locked. He stood there for a minute, heart pounding, and then he heard something. Footsteps from behind the door. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. David didn't wait to see who or what would open that door. He turned and practically ran back down the stairs, his footsteps echoing in the narrow space. When he got back to his apartment, he was shaking. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just Freddie doing maintenance. Maybe the 7th floor was used for storage, and the landlord just didn't want tenants poking around. But that didn't explain the mail, or the footsteps, or the feeling he had, standing outside that door, that whatever was on the other side wasn't supposed to be there. David decided to do one more thing. He went to the building's Facebook group, they had one of those, and posted a simple question. Does anyone know anything about apartment 7 Farads? Within an hour, the post was deleted. Not by him, by one of the group admins. He got a private message from Lorraine, the neighbor who told him not to ask questions. It said, "Leave it alone. Some doors aren't meant to be opened." David tried to reply, but Lorraine had already blocked him. Asterisk, pause, rain intensifies, slightly, asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk, narrator. Asterisk, asterisk. Here's the thing that still haunts David. A week after all of this, he was coming home late from work. Took the elevator to the 4th floor like always, but when the doors opened, he wasn't on the 4th floor. He was in a hallway he'd never seen before. The carpet was different, dark red, ornate. The lighting was dim, almost golden, and the apartment doors had brass numbers, not the cheap plastic ones in the rest of the building. At the end of the hall, he saw a door. 7 farads. The door was open, just a crack, and from inside, he could hear someone humming, a tune he didn't recognize. David should have gotten back in the elevator. He should have pressed any button and gotten out of there. But he didn't. He took one step toward the door, then another. And then the elevator doors behind him closed, and the hallway lights went out. David slammed his hand against the elevator button, panicking, and when the lights came back on 2 seconds later, he was on the 4th floor. His floor. Everything was normal. He ran to his apartment and locked the door. The next morning, he checked the back stairwell. The door to the 7th floor was gone. Just a blank wall. David still lives in that building. He still gets mail for Terrence Howell, apartment 7 farads. He throws it away now, doesn't ask questions. And he never, ever takes the elevator alone at night. All right, let's keep moving. Our next story is shorter, but no less unsettling. All right, this one's going to be quick, but it's stayed with me since I first heard it. A woman named Jessica moved into a top-floor apartment in Seattle. One of those modern buildings in Capitol Hill, all concrete and glass, built maybe 5 years ago. Everything was new, clean, minimalist, the kind of place where you felt safe. Jessica specifically chose the top floor because she'd had bad experiences with noisy upstairs neighbors before. She figured, top floor, no footsteps above her head, peaceful nights, problem solved. The first week was perfect, quiet, exactly what she wanted. Then, on the 8th night, around 2 a.m., she heard it. Footsteps. Above her. Not loud, not aggressive, just footsteps. Someone walking across the ceiling. Slow, measured, like someone pacing. Jessica lay there in the dark, staring up at the ceiling, thinking maybe she was hearing things. Maybe it was the building settling, or sounds traveling weird through the ventilation system. But the footsteps continued, back and forth, directly above her bedroom. The next morning, she went up to the roof access door, locked. She asked the building manager about it. He confirmed what she already knew. She lived on the top floor. The only thing above her was the roof, which was completely flat, empty except for some HVAC equipment. No access without a key, and the manager was the only one who had it. Jessica felt a little embarrassed, but also relieved. Must have been pipes or something. That night, the footsteps came back. This time, she recorded them on her phone. Played it back the next morning. Clear as day. Footsteps, walking, above her ceiling. She showed the recording to the building manager. He looked uncomfortable. Said he'd check the roof himself. He did. Found nothing. No footprints in the thin layer of dust and grime up there. No signs anyone had been up there in months. The footsteps continued every night for a week. But here's where it gets really strange. The footsteps started changing. At first, they sounded awkward. Like someone who didn't quite know how to walk. Uneven. Heavy on one step, light on the other. Stumbling, almost. But each night, they got better. More even, more confident, more human. By the 10th night, Jessica couldn't take it anymore. She went up to the roof access door at 2 a.m. with her phone's flashlight and a can of pepper spray. The door was still locked. She knocked on it, yelled up, "I know you're up there. I'm calling the police." The footsteps stopped. Complete silence. Jessica stood there for a full minute, heart hammering, waiting. Then she heard it. From directly above her head, impossible. Because she was standing in the stairwell right below the roof access, she heard a single, heavy footstep. Then another, coming down the stairs. from the roof side of the locked door. Jessica ran, didn't even go back to her apartment, ran straight out of the building and sat in her car until sunrise. When she finally went back inside, she brought the building manager and a police officer with her. They unlocked the roof access. Nothing up there. No one. No footprints. No evidence anyone had been on the roof. But when they were about to leave, the police officer noticed something. The dust on the roof wasn't undisturbed like the manager said. There was a pattern in it. Faint, but there. Footprints. Small ones, like a child's. But they didn't lead anywhere. They just started in the middle of the roof, walked in a tight circle about 10 feet across over and over and over, like someone had been pacing and then stopped. No trail leading to or from the circle. Just footprints in a loop. The police officer took photos, but there wasn't really anything they could do. No crime had been committed. No one was on the roof now. Jessica moved out 2 days later, but before she left, the building manager told her something he probably wasn't supposed to. The apartment directly below hers, 1 floor down, had been empty for 3 months. The previous tenant broke their lease early and left. The tenant before that also left early, and the tenant before that. In fact, in the 5 years that building had been open, Jessica's apartment had been rented 14 times. Average stay? 6 weeks. The building manager said most people complained about the noise, footsteps, above their heads, even though they were on the top floor. Jessica looked into the building's history after she moved out, found out the lot used to be a children's hospital, built in 1923, demolished in 2017. The pediatric ward was on the top floor, specifically the room where they kept children who were learning to walk again after accidents. Physical therapy, over and over, learning to take steps. Jessica still drives past that building sometimes. She says on clear nights, if you look up at the top floor, you can sometimes see a shadow moving back and forth behind the windows. Walking, practicing, getting better. Let's move to something a little different. This next one is longer, about 13 minutes, and it's going to mess with your head in a different way. It's called The Shared Wall. This story comes from a woman named Amanda, and it happened in Portland, Oregon, about 3 years ago. Amanda had just started a new job at a tech company downtown. Good salary, benefits, the whole package. She found an apartment in the Pearl District, nice area, older building that had been recently renovated. Exposed brick, hardwood floors, one of those places that looks great in photos. Her apartment was a 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor, standard layout, but the building was narrow, so the apartments were arranged side by side, with one shared wall between units. Amanda's neighbor on the other side of that wall was a woman named Claire. They met in the hallway during Amanda's first week. Claire was probably in her early 30s, like Amanda, quiet, polite, kept to herself. She worked from home doing something with graphic design. They'd exchange pleasantries, small talk about the building's weird radiator noises or the coffee shop on the corner. Normal neighbor stuff. Everything was fine for the first month. Then Amanda started hearing the crying. It started on a Tuesday night. Amanda was in bed, scrolling through her phone, about to fall asleep. Around 11:30, she heard it through the wall. Soft crying, muffled, like someone trying to stay quiet but not quite managing it. It was clearly coming from Claire's apartment. The sound was distinct, that hiccuping, gasping kind of crying when someone's really broken down. Amanda felt bad for her. Whatever Claire was going through, it sounded rough, but it wasn't really her business, so she put in earbuds and went to sleep. The next night, same thing. 11:30, crying through the wall, same desperate, heartbroken sound. By the 4th night, Amanda was worried. This wasn't just a bad day or a breakup. This was every single night, same time, same intensity. She decided to check on Claire. The next evening, around 7 p.m., Amanda knocked on Claire's door. Claire answered, looking completely normal, smiled, asked what was up. Amanda said carefully, "Hey, I just wanted to check in. I know this might sound weird, but are you okay? I've heard crying at night, and I just wanted to make sure everything's all right." Claire's smile faltered for just a second. Then she said, "Crying? No, I don't. I mean, I'm fine. Everything's good." Amanda felt embarrassed. "Oh, I'm sorry. I must be hearing things from another apartment or—" "It's okay," Claire said quickly. "These walls are thin. Sound travels weird. But yeah, I'm good. Thanks for asking, though." They chatted for another minute, awkward, both of them trying to move past the weirdness, and then Amanda went back to her apartment. That night, 11:30, the crying started again. Louder this time, more anguished. Amanda pressed her ear against the shared wall. It was definitely coming from Claire's apartment. Definitely Claire's voice. She could even tell it was coming from the bedroom, which shared a wall with Amanda's bedroom. Amanda didn't know what to do. Claire had clearly lied. But why? And was it really Amanda's place to push? She decided to give it a few more days. Maybe Claire was embarrassed. Maybe she'd open up eventually. But a week later, nothing changed. Crying every night at 11:30. Claire acting completely normal during the day. Then Amanda noticed something else. The crying didn't sound quite right. It's hard to explain. It was definitely the sound of someone crying, but there was something off about it. The rhythm was too regular. The gasps came at exact intervals. It almost sounded performed. Amanda started recording it on her phone, just short clips, because she felt guilty about it. When she played them back, the feeling got stronger. It sounded human, but also not. Like a loop, like a recording of someone crying, played every night at the same time. She tried to convince herself she was being paranoid. Maybe Claire was just a creature of habit. Maybe she had a specific time each night where her emotions caught up to her. But then things escalated. 2 weeks after the crying started, Amanda woke up at 3 a.m. to a strange sound, whispering, coming through the wall. She couldn't make out words, but it was definitely whispering. 2 voices, low, urgent, going back and forth. But Claire lived alone. Amanda had seen inside her apartment once. Claire had held the door open while signing for a package. 1 bedroom, just like Amanda's. No roommate, no partner. Amanda pressed her ear against the wall. The whispering continued. One voice sounded like Claire. The other voice was deeper, male, maybe, or just different. This went on for about 10 minutes. Then, abruptly, it stopped. Amanda lay awake for the rest of the night. The next morning, she saw Claire in the hallway. Amanda asked, casually, "Did you have someone over last night?" Claire looked confused. "No, why?" "I thought I heard voices." Claire's expression shifted. Not quite defensive, but guarded. "I had the TV on. Maybe that's what you heard." "At 3 a.m.? I couldn't sleep." Amanda nodded, let it drop, but she didn't believe it. That wasn't TV. Those were real voices, real conversation. Over the next few weeks, Amanda became obsessed with the sounds from Claire's apartment. The crying every night at 11:30, the whispering at random hours. Sometimes she'd hear footsteps pacing back and forth, for hours. But during the day, Claire seemed fine, happy even. She'd wave at Amanda, make small talk about the weather, complain about the building's management. Amanda started to wonder if she was losing her mind. Was she projecting something? Was her own stress from the new job making her paranoid? She mentioned it to a friend, who suggested maybe Claire had mental health issues. Maybe the sounds were real, but Claire was in denial, or didn't remember them. That made sense, sort of, until Amanda met Claire's coworker. It was random. Amanda was at a coffee shop, and a woman in line started chatting with her. They got to talking about work, neighborhoods, and Amanda mentioned she lived in the Pearl. The woman said, "Oh, my friend lives over there. Claire, graphic designer?" Small world. Amanda said yes. They were neighbors. The woman said, "How's she doing? I've been worried about her since her sister died." Amanda felt her stomach drop. Her sister died? Yeah, about 4 months ago. Car accident. They were really close. Claire took it hard. Stopped coming into the co-working space. Started working from home full-time. We check in on her, but she says she's coping. Amanda's mind raced. Did her sister? Did she ever stay with Claire? Like, visit a lot? The woman thought for a second. Yeah, actually. Before she died, she was staying with Claire for a few weeks. Going through a divorce or something. They shared Claire's apartment. Amanda went home that day and did something she probably shouldn't have done. She looked up Claire's sister, found the obituary online, found photos. The sister's name was Rachel. She was 29 when she died. The obituary said she was survived by her sister, Claire, and their parents. There was a photo. Rachel looked like Claire, similar features, but her voice, in a video Amanda found on Rachel's Facebook page, was different. Deeper, distinctive. The same voice Amanda had heard whispering through the wall at 3 a.m. Amanda didn't know what to do with this information. She couldn't exactly knock on Claire's door and say, "Hey, I think I'm hearing your dead sister in your apartment." So she did nothing, just listened, and the sounds continued, crying at 11:30, whispering in the early morning hours, footsteps pacing back and forth. But then, about a month after Amanda learned about Rachel, something changed. The crying stopped, just like that. No more sounds at 11:30. Amanda actually felt relieved. Maybe Claire was healing, moving on. Maybe whatever grief process she was going through, whether Amanda was hearing it or imagining it, was over. 3 days of silence. Then, on the fourth night, Amanda woke up to a sound she'd never heard before. Laughter, coming through the wall. Two voices, laughing together, high and bright and joyful. Claire and Rachel. Amanda got out of bed and pressed her ear against the wall. The laughter continued. She could hear conversation now, though she couldn't make out words. Just the rhythm of it. Two people talking, joking, laughing like old friends, like sisters. It went on for maybe 20 minutes. Then silence. Amanda couldn't sleep. She texted her friend. "I think my neighbor is talking to her dead sister." She didn't send it, deleted it, went back to bed. The next morning, Amanda saw Claire in the hallway. She looked different, lighter. She was smiling in a way Amanda had never seen before, genuine, peaceful. "Good morning," Claire said, bright and cheerful. "Morning," Amanda managed. "You seem happy." "I am," Claire said. "I really am. Everything just feels right, you know?" Amanda nodded, unsure what to say. Claire continued. "I know things have been weird. The walls are thin, and I'm sure you've heard stuff. But I'm doing better now, I promise." "That's good," Amanda said. "I'm glad." And she was. Mostly. But that night, when the laughter came through the wall again, two voices, two sisters. Together Amanda made a decision. She was moving out. Amanda broke her lease 2 weeks later, paid the penalty, didn't care. Before she left, she ran into Claire one last time, helped her carry groceries up the stairs. Claire's apartment door was open, and Amanda glanced inside. In the living room, there were 2 coffee cups on the table, both half full, both still steaming. Claire lived alone. Amanda still thinks about Claire sometimes. Wonders if she's okay. Wonders if she's still talking to Rachel. Still hearing her sister's voice through the walls. She looked up the building's rental listings about 6 months ago. Claire's apartment was available. The listing said, "Quiet building, great for remote work. Previous tenant loved it so much. She never wants to leave." Amanda thought that was a weird way to phrase it. But then again, maybe it was accurate. Maybe Claire really never wants to leave, because Rachel is still there. All right, let's switch gears. This next one is more urban legend territory, but enough people have reported experiencing it that I had to include it. It's about a laundry room, and a woman who won't stop folding clothes. This story is a little different because it doesn't come from just one person. It comes from multiple tenants, across multiple years, all living in the same building in Philadelphia. The building is in Northern Liberties, one of those converted factory buildings from the 1800s. Exposed beams, industrial windows, the whole aesthetic. They turned it into loft apartments back in 2008. There are about 60 units in the building, and for the past 15 years, at least a dozen tenants have reported the same experience. They call her the laundry room woman. The first report came from a guy named Tom, about 6 months after the building opened. Tom was a bartender, so he kept weird hours. He'd get home around 2 a.m., stay up for a bit, and sometimes do laundry in the middle of the night when the basement laundry room was empty. One night, 3 a.m., specifically, Tom went down to the basement with a basket of clothes. The laundry room was at the end of a long hallway. Fluorescent lights, concrete floor, 8 washers, 8 dryers. Nothing fancy. When Tom walked in, he saw a woman standing at one of the folding tables. She was maybe 50, wearing a floral dress, the kind you'd see in photos from the 70s or 80s. Her hair was pulled back in a bun. She was folding children's clothes, little shirts, small pants, tiny socks. Tom said, "Oh, sorry. Didn't know anyone was down here." The woman didn't look up, just kept folding, methodical, precise. Tom started loading his laundry into a washer, feeling a little awkward. The woman hadn't acknowledged him at all. After a minute, he tried again. "Late night, huh?" "Nothing." Tom glanced over. The woman was still folding, the same small shirt, over and over, folding it, setting it down, picking it up, folding it again. That's when Tom noticed something strange. There was only one piece of clothing on the table, that same little shirt, but she kept folding it like there were dozens of items. Tom felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you okay?" he asked. The woman finally stopped. Slowly, she turned to look at him. Her face was completely blank. No expression, just empty. Then she spoke. "Have you seen my daughter?" Her voice was flat, monotone. Tom stammered, I don't know. What does she look like?" The woman turned back to the folding table, picked up the shirt, folded it. "Have you seen my daughter?" Same tone, same words, like a recording. Tom grabbed his laundry basket, didn't even wait for his clothes to finish, and got the hell out of there. Tom told a few people about it. Most of them laughed it off, said he was probably just tired, half asleep. But then, 6 months later, another tenant reported the same thing. A woman named Priya. She worked as a nurse and also kept weird hours. Went down to do laundry at 3 a.m. one night. Found a woman in a floral dress folding children's clothes. Asked her the same question. "Have you seen my daughter?" Priya got out of there even faster than Tom did. Over the years, more reports came in. Always at 3 a.m. Always the same woman. Always folding the same small shirt. Always asking about her daughter. Some tenants would see her and just leave immediately. Others tried to engage, asked follow-up questions. One guy, a resident named Marcus, was really into paranormal stuff. When he heard about the laundry room woman, he decided to investigate. He went down to the basement at 3 a.m. with his phone ready to record. Sure enough, she was there, folding the shirt. Marcus said, "Hi, my name's Marcus. What's your name?" The woman didn't respond, just kept folding. "Can I help you find your daughter?" "Nothing." Marcus stepped closer, holding up his phone to record. "What does your daughter look like? How old is she?" The woman stopped folding, set down the shirt, turned to face Marcus, and this time, her expression wasn't blank. She was smiling, not a warm smile, not a happy smile, a wrong smile, too wide, too many teeth. "Have you seen my daughter?" she asked, but her voice was different now, distorted, layered, like multiple voices speaking at once. Marcus backed away. "No, I'm sorry, I haven't." The woman took a step toward him. "Have you seen my daughter?" Another step. Marcus turned and ran, dropped his phone, didn't even go back for it. The next morning, Marcus went back to the laundry room with 2 friends. The lights were on, everything looked normal. His phone was on the floor where he dropped it. He picked it up, checked the recording. The video showed him entering the laundry room, talking, moving his phone around to film. But the woman wasn't in the footage. The folding table was empty. Marcus was talking to no one. After that, the building management tried to address the situation. They sent out an email saying, "Please be respectful of other tenants. If you see someone in the laundry room who appears confused or distressed, contact building security immediately." But they couldn't really acknowledge what was happening, because what were they going to say? There's a ghost in the laundry room? The sightings continued. A woman named Keisha saw her and asked, "What's your daughter's name?" The laundry room woman stopped folding. For the first time, someone had asked a different question. She turned to Keisha and whispered, "Anna." Then she went back to folding. Keisha felt brave. "How old is Anna?" 7. "When did you last see her?" The woman's hands stilled on the shirt. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then softly, "I can't remember." Keisha reported this conversation to a few other tenants, and word spread. People started getting curious. A few of them did research on the building. Turned out, before it was converted to apartments, the building was a textile factory, operated from 1892 to 1974. In 1951, there was an accident, a fire in the factory. 3 people died. One of them was a woman named Dorothy Walsh, age 47. She worked in the folding department. Her 7-year-old daughter, Anna, had been with her that day. Dorothy sometimes brought Anna to work during summer break against the rules, but the supervisors looked the other way. When the fire broke out, Dorothy got Anna out of the building, told her to run, wait across the street. Then Dorothy went back in to help other workers evacuate. She never came back out. Anna survived, grew up, eventually moved away from Philadelphia. The records show she died in 2003, age 59, in Arizona. But here's the thing that gets to me. Multiple tenants who've seen the laundry room woman say she's always folding the same shirt, a small, child's shirt, and she's always asking if anyone has seen her daughter. Because the last thing Dorothy did before she died was make sure Anna was safe, sent her outside, away from the fire. And maybe, in whatever way ghosts work, if they work at all, Dorothy is still down there, in the place she died, folding clothes like she used to, still looking for Anna, not knowing that Anna got out, that Anna survived, that Anna lived a full life. Dorothy is still waiting for her daughter to come back. The building management doesn't really talk about it. There's no official acknowledgement. But if you look at the building's website, there's a note in the frequently asked questions section. The laundry room is accessible 24/7, but we recommend using it during daytime hours for your safety and convenience. Most tenants follow that advice now, but every once in a while, someone new moves in, doesn't know the story, decides to do laundry late at night, and at 3 a.m. they see her, standing at the folding table, wearing a floral dress, folding a small shirt, over and over and over, and when they try to leave, they hear her voice behind them. "Have you seen my daughter?" One last thing. A tenant named Lisa, who moved out of the building last year, told me something strange. She was down in the laundry room one afternoon, like 2 p.m., totally normal time, and she found a small shirt on one of the folding tables. Children's shirt, blue with little sailboats on it. Very vintage, like something from the 50s. No one in the building had kids that young, and it definitely wasn't there when she'd started her laundry. Lisa picked it up. It was perfectly folded, still warm from the dryer. Lisa left the shirt on the table and backed away. When she came back 20 minutes later to get her clothes, the shirt was gone. She asked the building super about it. He just sighed and said, "Don't worry about it. Happens sometimes." Like it was the most normal thing in the world. So yeah, if you're ever in a converted factory building in Philadelphia and you need to do laundry, maybe do it during the day. Or at least, if you see a woman in a floral dress folding clothes at 3 a.m., don't ask if you can help. Just leave. She's not looking for help. She's looking for Anna, and Anna's not coming back. All right, we're about 45 minutes in now. Time for our first major story. This one's longer, about 23 minutes, and it's going to take you on a journey. It's called The Rent-Controlled Tenant, and it's one of the strangest things I've ever researched. All right, settle in. This one's going to take a while, and it's worth it. This happened to a couple, Jake and Melissa, in New York City, Manhattan, Upper West Side, which, if you know anything about New York real estate, you know is expensive as hell. Jake and Melissa had been looking for an apartment for months. Everything was either too small, too expensive, or in a terrible location. They were about to give up and move to Brooklyn when they found a listing that seemed too good to be true. 2-bedroom apartment, pre-war building, hardwood floors, high ceilings, original molding, crown jewel. The rent was $1,800 a month. In Manhattan, Upper West Side. For context, a studio in that neighborhood usually runs about $2,500. A 2-bedroom? Easily $4,000 or more. Jake thought it was a scam, but Melissa convinced him to at least look at it. The building was on West 84th Street, between Amsterdam and Columbus. Beautiful old brownstone, built in 1924. The kind of place that's been there so long it feels like part of the neighborhood's bones. The landlord met them outside. His name was Mr. Castellano, older guy, maybe 70, with thick glasses and a tired expression. He led them up to the 3rd floor, apartment 3B. When he opened the door, Jake and Melissa understood why the rent was so low. The apartment was dated, like seriously dated. The wallpaper looked like it was from the 60s. The kitchen had avocado green appliances. The bathroom had pink tile. Everything was clean, but nothing had been updated in decades. Still, the bones were good. High ceilings, lots of light, solid floors. "We can work with this," Melissa whispered to Jake. Mr. Castellano cleared his throat. "Before you decide, there's something you should know." Here it comes, Jake thought. The catch. The apartment next door, 3 Ambience, is rent-controlled, Mr. Castellano said. The tenant has lived there since 1987. He's elderly. You might hear him sometimes, moving around, watching TV. He keeps to himself, but the walls are thin. Jake and Melissa exchanged glances. That was it? An old neighbor? "That's fine," Melissa said. "We're pretty quiet ourselves." Mr. Castellano nodded slowly. "Good. One more thing. There's a floor in this building that's, well, it's not accessible to tenants. The 13th floor, it's sealed off. Used to be storage, but the structure isn't safe. Don't try to go up there." "Wait," Jake said. "How many floors does this building have?" 14, Mr. Castellano said. "But the 13th is closed. You use the elevator or the stairs. It'll skip from 12 to 14. Old buildings in New York, some of them don't even number the 13th floor. Superstition, mostly." That seemed weird, but not unheard of. Jake had heard about buildings skipping the 13th floor. They took the apartment. The first few weeks were great. Jake and Melissa moved in, started fixing the place up, painted the walls, replaced some of the light fixtures, made it feel more like home. The neighbor in 3 Ambience was quiet. Occasionally they'd hear a TV through the wall sounded like old game shows or news programs, sometimes footsteps, but nothing disruptive. They never actually saw the neighbor. Jake knocked on the door once to introduce himself, but no one answered. He figured the guy was hard of hearing, or just didn't want to be bothered. Then, about a month in, Melissa noticed something odd. She was checking their mailbox in the lobby, and saw that the box for apartment 3 Ambience had mail in it. Lots of mail. Overflowing, actually. She mentioned it to Mr. Castellano the next time she saw him. "Oh, don't worry about that," he said quickly. "Mr. Kowalski doesn't check his mail much. I handle his bills for him. He's very old, doesn't get around well." "Is he okay?" Melissa asked. "Does he need help with anything?" "He's fine. Prefers to be left alone." Something about the way Mr. Castellano said it made Melissa drop the subject, but it stuck with her. 2 months into living there, Jake was home alone one afternoon. Melissa was at work. He was in the living room, working on his laptop, when he heard something from the apartment next door. Singing, faint but clear, an old song, something from the 40s or 50s, maybe, A man's voice, raspy and thin. Jake smiled. Mr. Kowalski was having a good day, apparently. But then the singing stopped, and Jake heard something else. Talking, two voices. One was the old man's voice, Mr. Kowalski, presumably. The other voice was younger, a woman's voice. They were having a conversation. Jake couldn't make out the words, but the rhythm was clear, back and forth, question and answer. Jake was confused. Mr. Castellano said Mr. Kowalski lived alone. Maybe he had a caretaker, a visiting nurse. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes, then stopped. Jake didn't think much of it until Melissa came home and he mentioned it. A woman's voice, Melissa said. Maybe he has a daughter who visits. Maybe. But that night, at 2 a.m., Jake woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Not in apartment 3 Ambience. In the hallway outside their door. Slow, shuffling footsteps. Back and forth. Like someone pacing. Jake got up quietly. Looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. But the footsteps continued. He could hear them clearly. The sound of someone walking on the old wooden floor, creaking with each step. Jake opened the door. The hallway was empty. The footsteps stopped. Jake started paying more attention after that. And once he started paying attention, he noticed things. The mail situation. For one, Melissa was right. The mailbox for 3 Amperes was always full. But more than that, the mail was old. Jake snuck a look one day. Some of the envelopes were postmarked from months ago, some from years ago. He also noticed that apartment 3 Amperes' door looked different from the other apartment doors. It was the same style, but the paint was older, faded, like it hadn't been opened in a long time. And then there was the smell. Every once in a while, Jake would catch a whiff of something in the hallway. Not exactly decay, more like old air, stale, like a room that's been closed up for decades. He mentioned all of this to Melissa. She thought he was being paranoid. Old buildings smell weird, she said, and old people are eccentric. He probably has hoarding issues or something. That's why the door looks weird and the mail piles up. But I heard people talking in there, Jake insisted. Maybe he was on the phone or watching TV. Jake wanted to believe that, but something felt wrong. 3 months into their lease, Jake decided to do some research. He went to the New York Public Library and looked up the building's history, property records, newspaper archives, anything he could find. The building had been constructed in 1924 by a developer named Samuel Houghton. Pretty standard stuff. It had been a residential building its entire existence. Jake looked for any incidents, fires, deaths, anything unusual. Nothing major. A few tenants had died of natural causes over the decades, but that's normal for a building that old. Then Jake searched for Kowalski and the building's address. He found a name, Leonard Kowalski, listed as a tenant in apartment 3 Amperes. The earliest record Jake could find was from 1987, a lease agreement. Leonard Kowalski, rent-controlled tenant, $287 per month. Rent control in New York is a big deal. Once you have it, you keep it for life. Your rent can only increase by a tiny percentage each year. People with rent-controlled apartments sometimes pay a fraction of what current market rate is. Jake kept digging, found more records. 1,990, 1,995, 2,000, 2005, all the way up to 2010. Every year, Leonard Kowalski's rent went up by just a few dollars. By 2010, he was paying $412 per month for a 2-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side. Then the record stopped. Nothing after 2010. Jake searched for obituaries, death certificates, anything. He found one. Leonard Kowalski, born 1925, died February 2011, age 86. Jake sat in the library, staring at the screen. Leonard Kowalski died in 2011, 13 years ago. But Mr. Castellano said he was still living in apartment 3 Ambience, still paying rent, still watching TV. Jake went home and told Melissa everything. She was skeptical, but she was also unnerved. "Maybe it's a different Kowalski," she said. "Maybe a relative took over the lease. That can happen with rent-controlled apartments, right?" "I don't think so," Jake said. "Not unless they were living there when the original tenant died." They decided to test something. That night, they both stayed up and listened carefully to the sounds from apartment 3 Ambience. Around 10 p.m., the TV came on. They could hear it clearly. Some old sitcom, laugh track, muffled dialogue. At 11:30, the TV turned off. Footsteps, moving from one room to another, then silence. Jake and Melissa looked at each other. "Someone's in there," Melissa whispered. "Yeah," Jake said. "But who?" The next day, Jake called Mr. Castellano. "I have a question about the tenant in 3 Ambience," Jake said, trying to sound casual. "Mr. Kowalski, I've never actually met him. Is he doing okay?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "He's fine," Mr. Castellano said finally. "Why do you ask?" I hear him sometimes, through the wall. Wanted to make sure he's all right." Another pause. "Listen," Mr. Castellano said, his voice lower now. "That apartment is none of your concern. Mr. Kowalski has been a tenant longer than you've been alive. He pays his rent on time. That's all that matters. Don't bother him. Don't knock on his door. Just leave it alone." Before Jake could respond, Mr. Castellano hung up. That conversation only made Jake more determined to figure out what was going on. He started watching the building more carefully, taking note of who came and went. He never saw anyone enter or exit apartment 3 Ambience. Not once. He asked other tenants about it. An older woman on the 4th floor said she'd lived in the building for 20 years and had never seen Mr. Kowalski. "He's like a ghost," she said with a laugh. "People say he's been here forever, but no one's ever actually met him." Jake asked the woman on the 2nd floor. Same story. No one had ever seen Leonard Kowalski, but everyone heard him. The TV, the footsteps, the occasional singing. Jake became obsessed. He spent hours researching rent-controlled apartments, trying to figure out if there was some legal loophole that would allow a dead man's lease to continue. He couldn't find anything. When a rent-controlled tenant dies, the lease ends. The apartment goes back to the landlord, who can then charge market rate. Unless, Jake found one exception. In very rare cases, if a landlord wants to keep an apartment rent-controlled, maybe for tax purposes or some other financial reason, they can maintain the lease under the original tenant's name. But that would require the landlord to essentially pretend the tenant is still alive, keep paying utilities under their name, keep the apartment technically occupied. It was fraud, basically. But it was possible. Maybe that's what Mr. Castellano was doing. But that didn't explain the sounds, the TV, the footsteps, the singing. Unless Mr. Castellano was going into the apartment himself, playing recordings or something, to maintain the illusion. It sounded insane, but Jake couldn't think of another explanation. Jake decided he needed to see inside apartment 3 Ambience. He waited until he saw Mr. Castellano leave the building one afternoon. Then he went to 3 Ambience and knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again, louder. "Mr. Kowalski, it's your neighbor from 3B. Just wanted to check if everything's okay." Silence. Jake tried the doorknob. Locked, obviously. But as he stood there, he heard something. Footsteps. Inside the apartment, coming toward the door. Jake's heart hammered. He stepped back. The footsteps stopped right on the other side of the door. Jake could feel it. Someone was standing there, inches away, separated only by the door. He waited. Nothing. "Mr. Kowalski," Jake said quietly. No response. Jake stood there for a full minute. Then he heard the footsteps again, moving away from the door. Slow, shuffling. He went back to his apartment, shaking. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds from apartment 3 Ambience. Around 3 a.m., he heard something new. Music. Not from a TV, not from a radio. Live music. A piano. Someone was playing the piano in apartment 3 Ambience. Jake got out of bed and pressed his ear against the shared wall. The music was beautiful. Old jazz maybe. Something from the 30s or 40s. Complex chords. Skillful playing. It went on for about 20 minutes. Then it stopped. Jake heard a voice. The old man's voice. Raspy and tired. "Good night, sweetheart." Then silence. The next morning, Jake told Melissa he was going to break into apartment 3 Ambience. She thought he'd lost his mind. "You can't do that. It's illegal. What if someone's actually in there?" "Then I'll apologize and leave," Jake said. "But I need to know what's going on." Melissa tried to talk him out of it, but Jake was determined. He waited until the following afternoon, when the building was mostly empty. People at work. Mr. Castellano gone for the day. Jake went to apartment 3 Ambience with a lockpick set he'd ordered online. He'd watched tutorials. It took him about 10 minutes, but he got the door open. The smell hit him first. That stale, old air smell he'd noticed in the hallway before, but concentrated, overwhelming. Jake pushed the door open slowly. The apartment was dark. Heavy curtains blocked the windows. He used his phone's flashlight to see. The apartment was furnished. Old furniture stuff from the 80s, maybe earlier. A couch with faded floral upholstery. A TV on a stand, one of those big old CRT TVs. There was a piano against one wall. An upright. The keys were yellowed. Jake moved through the apartment slowly. Everything was covered in dust. Thick layers of it. Like no one had been there in years. He checked the bedroom. Empty. The bed was made. More dust. Kitchen. Empty. A few dishes in the sink, covered in dust. Bathroom. Empty. No one was there. No one had been there in a very long time. Jake stood in the middle of the living room, trying to process this. The sounds. The TV. The footsteps. The piano music. All of it was real. He'd heard it. Melissa had heard it. But no one was here. Jake noticed something on the coffee table, a piece of paper. He picked it up, careful not to disturb the dust too much. It was a rent check, made out to Mr. Castellano, dated from 2 weeks ago. The signature, Leonard Kowalski. Jake took a photo of the check, then carefully left the apartment, locked the door behind him. He went back to 3B and sat on the couch, staring at the photo on his phone. The check was dated 2 weeks ago. Leonard Kowalski died in 2011. Someone was still writing checks in his name. Jake called Mr. Castellano. "I need to talk to you," Jake said. "About apartment 3 Ambience." Silence. "I was inside," Jake admitted. "I broke in. I know there's no one there." A long pause. "You shouldn't have done that," Mr. Castellano said finally. His voice was different now. Sad. Resigned. "Who's writing the checks?" Jake asked. "Who's pretending to be Leonard Kowalski?" Another pause. "No one," Mr. Castellano said. "The checks just appear in my mailbox every month, like clockwork, for the past 13 years. Jake met with Mr. Castellano the next day, in person, at a coffee shop a few blocks from the building. Mr. Castellano looked exhausted, like he'd been carrying a heavy weight for a long time. "Leonard Kowalski was a good man, Mr. Castellano said. "He moved into that apartment in 1987. He was a pianist, played in clubs around the city, never married, no kids. The building was his home, his whole life." "What happened when he died?" Jake asked. "He died in the apartment," Mr. Castellano said quietly, peacefully, in his sleep, February 2011. "I found him 3 days later when I went to check on him. And then I arranged for his funeral, contacted the few people who knew him, closed up the apartment, started the process to clear it out so I could release it. But you never did." Mr. Castellano shook his head. "A week after he died, I got a check in the mail, rent for 3 Ambience, signed by Leonard Kowalski." Jake felt chills. "I thought it was a mistake," Mr. Castellano continued. Maybe a check he'd written before he died, just delayed in the mail, so I cashed it. But the next month, another check came, and the month after that, for 13 years. For 13 years. Have you tried to stop it? Jake asked. Told the bank? Reported it? I did, Mr. Castellano said. The first few times. The bank said the account was closed. Leonard's account was closed when he died. There's no money in it, but the checks keep clearing. That's impossible. I know. They sat in silence for a moment. What about the sounds? Jake asked. The TV, the piano. People hear them. Mr. Castellano nodded. I hear them too. Sometimes I go up there, thinking maybe someone broke in, but the apartment is always empty, always locked, just like you found it. So what is it? Mr. Castellano looked out the window. I think Leonard never left. I think he's still there, still living his life, playing his piano, watching his shows, and somehow, in whatever way these things work, he's still paying his rent. Jake moved out 3 months later. He and Melissa broke their lease, paid the penalty, found a place in Brooklyn. Before they left, Jake went to apartment 3 Ambience one last time, stood outside the door. He knocked softly. Mr. Kowalski, I'm moving out. Just wanted to say, I hope you're at peace. He waited. For a moment, nothing. Then, from inside the apartment, he heard it. A single note on the piano. Clear, resonant, and then silence. Jake looked into the building's history one more time after he moved out. He found something interesting. Mr. Castellano had mentioned that the 13th floor was sealed off, structurally unsafe, but Jake couldn't find any records of structural damage. No permits for repairs, no complaints filed. He did find something else, though. In 1952, there was a fire on the 13th floor. 3 apartments were destroyed. 2 people died. The floor was sealed off afterward, never repaired, never reopened. And according to the building records, rent checks are still being paid for 2 apartments on the 13th floor. Apartments 13C and 13 Farads. The tenants who died in the fire, they've been paying rent for 70 years. Mr. Castellano still owns the building, still collects the checks, still hears the sounds from apartments that should be empty. He told Jake one last thing before they parted ways. Some people never leave the place they called home, even after death. Maybe because they were happy there. Maybe because they have nowhere else to go. I don't know. But I've learned not to question it. The building takes care of them, and they take care of the building. Jake asked what he meant by that. Mr. Castellano smiled sadly. The building never has maintenance issues. Pipes don't freeze. Roof doesn't leak. It's like it's being maintained by someone. Or something. I think the tenants who stayed behind Leonard. The others, I think they're keeping it standing. Jake doesn't live in Manhattan anymore. But sometimes, late at night, he thinks about Leonard Kowalski. Wonders if he's still there, in apartment 3 Ambience. Still playing his piano. Still watching his shows. Still writing rent checks that somehow, impossibly, clear. Still home. All right, that was a lot. Let's take a breath. We're about an hour and 8 minutes in. Time to switch gears a bit. This next story is shorter, about 8 minutes, and it's going to mess with your head in a different way. It's about mirrors, and the person on the other side. This one happened to a woman named Caroline in San Francisco, Mission District. One of those newer buildings built maybe 10 years ago, all clean lines and minimalist design. Caroline's apartment was a studio on the 5th floor, Unit 5E. Across the hall was Unit 5 Farads. The building had a simple layout, even-numbered units on one side of the hallway, odd-numbered on the other. The apartments were mirror images of each other, same square footage, same layout, just flipped. 5E and 5 Farads were directly across from each other. If you stood in Caroline's living room and looked at the floor plan, then flipped it horizontally, you'd have her neighbor's apartment. Her neighbor's name was David. Caroline met David in the elevator during her first week. He seemed nice enough. Mid-30s, worked in tech, pretty standard for San Francisco. They did the polite neighbor thing, smiled, said hello in the hallway. That was it. Caroline didn't think much about him until she started noticing something weird. She'd be in her apartment, doing normal things, cooking dinner, watching TV, working at her desk, and she'd hear sounds from across the hall. From David's apartment, sounds that matched exactly what she was doing. At first, she thought it was coincidence. She'd be washing dishes, and she'd hear water running from his place. She'd be vacuuming, and she'd hear his vacuum. Lots of people have similar routines, right? Come home from work, make dinner, clean up. Nothing strange about that. But then it started getting more specific. One night, Caroline was watching a movie on Netflix, a thriller she'd been meaning to see. About 20 minutes in, she paused it to go to the bathroom. As she walked past her front door, she heard something from across the hall. The exact same movie, same scene, same dialogue. She could hear it clearly through the door. Caroline stood there, listening. Maybe David was watching the same movie. Also a coincidence. She unpaused her movie and kept watching. Through the wall, she heard David's movie unpause at the exact same moment. Caroline paused hers again. David's paused. She felt a chill run down her spine. She unpaused it. David unpaused. Caroline turned off the TV and sat in silence, heart pounding. This was crazy. There was no way David could see what she was doing. No way he could know exactly when she paused and unpaused her movie. Unless... She walked quietly to her front door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. David's door was closed. But she could still hear the TV from his apartment, still playing the same movie. Caroline went to bed feeling unsettled. Told herself she was being paranoid. The buildings had thin walls. Sound traveled weird. David just happened to be watching the same movie at the same time. That's all. But the next night, it happened again. Caroline was at her desk, working on her laptop, writing an email. She stopped typing to think about what to say next. From across the hall, David's typing stopped at the exact same moment. Caroline started typing again. So did David. She stopped. He stopped. Caroline's hands were shaking now. She got up from her desk and moved to the center of her apartment, away from the shared wall. The typing from David's apartment stopped. She walked to her bedroom. She heard footsteps from across the hall, moving to David's bedroom. She stopped walking. The footsteps stopped. Caroline stood perfectly still in her bedroom, barely breathing. She took one step to the left. From across the hall, she heard David take one step, in the same direction, as if he was standing in his bedroom, in the exact mirror position of where she was standing, moving when she moved, stopping when she stopped. Caroline grabbed her phone and called her friend Lisa. "I think my neighbor is stalking me," she whispered. Lisa was concerned. "What's he doing?" I don't know how to explain it. He's mimicking everything I do, like exactly when I do it. Can he see into your apartment?" Caroline looked around. Her curtains were closed. No cameras that she could see. "I don't think so." "Maybe he bugged your apartment?" Lisa suggested. "Planted cameras or something?" It sounded paranoid. But Caroline couldn't think of another explanation. She spent the next hour searching her apartment. Checked every corner, every shelf, every electrical outlet. Nothing. No cameras, no bugs, nothing. But the sounds continued. When she moved, David moved. When she sat down, he sat down. When she went to the kitchen, she heard him in his kitchen. Always in the mirror position. Always at the exact same time. Caroline decided to test something. She stood in the center of her living room, raised her right hand. From across the hall, she heard a soft thump, like someone raising their arm and it brushing against something. She lowered her hand. Silence. She raised her left hand. Another soft thump, from the mirror position in David's apartment. Caroline felt sick. The next morning, Caroline saw David in the hallway. She'd been dreading this moment, but she needed to say something. "Hey, David," she said, trying to sound casual. "Can I ask you something weird?" David smiled. "Sure. Do you ever?" I mean, this is going to sound strange, but do you ever hear sounds from my apartment? David's smile didn't falter. Sometimes, yeah, the walls are pretty thin. Do you ever, notice what I'm doing? What time I come home? Or when I'm cooking? Or... David's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. I guess I notice sometimes. Why? Caroline forced a laugh. No reason, just curious. She went back to her apartment and locked the door. That night, Caroline decided to do something drastic. She rearranged her furniture, completely changed the layout of her apartment, moved her couch to a different wall, moved her bed to where her desk used to be, changed everything. If David was somehow tracking her position in the apartment, this would throw him off. The mirror layout wouldn't work anymore. She finished around midnight. Exhausted, she lay down on her newly positioned bed and tried to sleep. At 2 a.m., she woke up to sounds from across the hall. Furniture being moved, dragging, scraping, heavy objects shifting across the floor. For an hour, David rearranged his apartment, matching hers, keeping the mirror image intact. Caroline didn't sleep that night. She sat in her living room with the lights on, clutching her phone, ready to call 911 if David tried to come in. He didn't. But at 3 a.m., after the furniture moving stopped, she heard something else. A voice. David's voice. Through the wall. Good night, Caroline. Caroline moved out the next day. Didn't even pack most of her stuff, just threw some clothes in a bag and left. She stayed with Lisa for a few days, then found a new apartment across town. Ground floor. No neighbors on the other side of the wall. She never went back to get her things. Told the landlord to keep her security deposit and donate whatever was left in the apartment. Before she left the city, she looked into David's background, found his social media, his LinkedIn. Everything seemed normal. He had friends, a job, a seemingly normal life. But there was one photo that stopped her cold. It was from 3 years ago. David standing in an apartment, a different apartment. The caption said, "New place, 7 Farads." In the background, you could see a door across the hall. 7E. Caroline reached out to the person who'd lived in 7E 3 years ago. Found her through a mutual friend. The woman's name was Jessica. "Oh my God," Jessica said when Caroline explained why she was calling. "He did the same thing to me. The mimicking, the moving furniture. I thought I was losing my mind." "Did you report him?" "I tried. The police said there was nothing they could do. He wasn't breaking any laws. He wasn't threatening me. He was just existing in his apartment, doing whatever he wanted." "Did he ever hurt you?" "No. He never even came near me. But I couldn't live like that, knowing he was always on the other side of the wall, always watching, always matching." Caroline asked Jessica one more question. "Do you know where he lived before 7 Farads?" Jessica was quiet for a moment. Then, "I looked it up after I moved out. He lived in a building in Oakland, Unit 4B. Let me guess. Someone lived in 4 Ambience across from him?" "Yeah, a woman. She moved out after 6 months." Caroline doesn't know where David lives now. She blocked him on social media, changed her number, moved twice more just to be safe. But sometimes, late at night, she wakes up and listens for sounds that match her breathing, footsteps that mirror her own, a voice through the wall saying goodnight. So far, there's been nothing. But she checks the apartment across from hers every time she comes home, just to make sure it's empty, just to make sure no one is standing on the other side of the wall, matching her every move, learning her patterns, waiting. All right, let's move into something different, more grounded, real crime territory. This next one is about 12 minutes, and it's based on police reports and witness statements. It's called The Sublet, and it's going to stay with you. This one comes from police reports in Boston, Massachusetts, 2019. I'm changing some names for privacy reasons, but everything else is exactly as documented. A man named Michael, mid-30s, software engineer, needed to sublet his apartment for 3 months while he took a contract job in Seattle. His apartment was in Alston, near the university. 1 bedroom, nothing fancy, but the location was good. Michael posted the listing on Craigslist and a few roommate finder sites. Got a bunch of responses. Most of them seemed sketchy, people with no references, offering to pay cash, that kind of thing. But one response stood out. A guy named Andrew Chen, late 20s, graduate student at BU, studying psychology. He had references from previous landlords, seemed responsible, quiet, non-smoker. Perfect. They met at a coffee shop to go over the details. Andrew was polite, soft-spoken. He asked good questions about the apartment, parking, laundry, trash pickup, all the normal stuff. Michael felt good about him. They signed a short-term sublease agreement. Andrew paid first month's rent plus deposit. Everything was handled through Venmo, with documentation all above board. Michael handed over the keys on September 1st. Andrew moved in that afternoon. Michael flew to Seattle the next day. For the first month, everything was fine. Michael checked in with Andrew a few times via text, asked how things were going. Any problems with the apartment? Andrew always responded quickly. Everything's great, no issues. Thanks again for the opportunity. Michael relaxed. His contract in Seattle was going well. He'd be back in Boston by early December, move back into his apartment, and everything would go back to normal. Then, in mid-October, Michael got a weird text from his neighbor. The neighbor's name was Patricia. Older woman, lived across the hall. She'd been there for years, and she and Michael had a friendly relationship. She'd water his plants when he was out of town, that kind of thing. Her text said, "Is everything okay with your apartment? I haven't seen your subletter in a while." Michael texted back, "What do you mean?" Patricia, "I haven't seen him in maybe 2 weeks. His car hasn't moved. No sounds from the apartment. Just wanted to make sure everything's all right." Michael felt a flutter of concern. He texted Andrew, "Hey, just checking in. Everything good?" No response. He waited an hour, texted again. "Andrew, can you reply when you get this? My neighbor mentioned she hasn't seen you around." Still no response. Michael tried calling, went straight to voicemail. He called Patricia. "Have you knocked on the door? Checked if he's there?" "I knocked yesterday," Patricia said. No answer, but I can hear the TV sometimes, so someone must be there. Michael didn't know what to do. He was in Seattle. He couldn't exactly fly back to Boston to check on a subletter who was probably just busy with school and forgot to reply to texts. But something felt off. He called the building management, explained the situation, asked if they could do a wellness check. The property manager said he'd stop by. An hour later, the property manager called back. "I knocked on the door. No answer, but the lights are on inside. I can see them under the door, and I hear the TV. I don't think there's an emergency here. He's probably just home and doesn't want to be bothered." Michael felt a little embarrassed. Maybe Andrew just wanted privacy. Maybe he was annoyed that Michael's neighbor was keeping tabs on him. "Okay," Michael said. "Thanks for checking," but he still felt uneasy. Another week went by. Michael texted Andrew several more times. No response. He called. Voicemail. He reached out to Andrew's references, the previous landlords Andrew had listed on his application, asked if they'd heard from him. One of them said, "Andrew Chen? I don't know anyone by that name." Michael felt his stomach drop. "You were listed as a reference on his rental application. Someone must have used my name without permission. I've never rented to anyone named Andrew Chen." Michael called the other reference. Same thing. They'd never heard of Andrew. The references were fake. Michael immediately called the Boston police, explained the situation. A man had sublet his apartment under false pretenses, using fake references, and was now not responding to calls or texts. The police said they'd send someone to check on the apartment. Michael stayed on the phone with the dispatcher while 2 officers went to his building. They knocked on the door. No answer. They knocked again, louder, announced themselves. "Boston PD, we're doing a wellness check. Please open the door. Nothing. Patricia, the neighbor, came out into the hallway, confirmed that she'd been hearing sounds from the apartment TV, occasional footsteps, but hadn't seen Andrew in weeks. The officers decided to enter. Michael gave permission over the phone. The property manager brought up a master key. They opened the door. The apartment was lived in. That's how the police report described it. The lights were on. The TV was on, playing a local news channel. There was a coffee mug on the counter, still half full. A jacket hanging on the coat rack. Shoes by the door. Like someone had just stepped out for a minute and would be right back. But no one was there. The officers searched the apartment thoroughly, checked the bedroom, the bathroom, the closets. Nothing. Andrew Chen was gone, but his belongings were still there, sort of. Here's where it gets really strange. The officers found clothes in the closet, men's clothes. But when Michael described what Andrew had been wearing when they met, jeans, a black jacket, sneakers, the officers found those exact items in the apartment. There was a laptop on the desk. The officers opened it. It wasn't password protected. The desktop background was a photo of Michael's apartment, the same view Michael had used in his rental listing. There were files on the laptop, hundreds of photos, all of Michael's apartment, different angles, different rooms, time-stamped over the past 6 weeks, like someone had been documenting every inch of the space. But there was something else. In the bedroom closet, the officers found Michael's clothes. Not Andrew's clothes, Michael's. The clothes Michael had left behind when he moved to Seattle, hanging exactly where Michael had left them. But when the officers looked closer, some of the clothes were in slightly different positions, like someone had been wearing them, trying them on. There were photos on the laptop of someone wearing Michael's clothes, but the photos were taken from behind, or at angles where you couldn't see the person's face. Just someone in Michael's apartment, wearing Michael's clothes, standing in Michael's bedroom. The officers asked Michael, "Did Andrew look similar to you? Height, build, anything like that?" Michael thought about it. Sort of. I mean, we were both around the same height, similar build, dark hair, but I don't think we looked that similar. One of the officers said, "We're going to need you to review these photos when you can. See if you notice anything unusual." Michael flew back to Boston 2 days later, walked into his apartment with a police escort. Everything looked normal at first glance, but the more Michael looked, the more he noticed things that were off. His books had been rearranged, not randomly, deliberately, alphabetically by author, which wasn't how Michael had organized them. His furniture had been moved, just slightly, a few inches here and there, but enough that Michael noticed. The photos on his walls, family photos, pictures with friends, had been taken down and replaced with different photos. Photos of Michael that he didn't remember taking. Photos of him sleeping. Michael went through the laptop more thoroughly, found folders labeled with dates, September 1st through October 23rd. Almost 2 months of documentation. Photos of the apartment at different times of day, morning, afternoon, evening, night. Videos too. Short clips. Someone walking through the apartment, opening cabinets, sitting on the couch, lying in the bed. Always shot from a fixed position, like the camera had been set up on a tripod. In some of the videos, you could hear breathing, heavy, deliberate breathing, and occasionally, a voice, Andrew's voice, talking to himself. No, not to himself, talking to Michael. In one video, dated October 10th, Andrew's voice says, "I'm trying to understand you, how you live, how you think, what it's like to be you." In another video, dated October 15th, "I sleep in your bed now, I wear your clothes, I eat at your table, I'm learning." And in the final video, dated October 23rd, the last day anyone reported hearing sounds in the apartment, Andrew's voice says, "I think I'm ready now. Thank you for letting me stay in your life. I understand now what it means to be Michael." Then the video cuts to black. The police launched an investigation, tried to find Andrew Chen. There was no record of anyone by that name enrolled at BU. No one matching Andrew's description. The Venmo account he'd used to pay rent was closed. The money was gone, transferred out to an account that couldn't be traced. The cell phone number Andrew had given Michael was a burner phone, deactivated. The email address bounced back. Andrew Chen didn't exist. Or rather, he existed just long enough to sublet Michael's apartment, and then he disappeared. The police reviewed security footage from the building. There were cameras in the lobby and the parking garage. The footage showed Andrew Chen entering the building on September 1st with a suitcase and a backpack. Over the next 6 weeks, the footage showed him leaving the building a few times, going to the grocery store, coming back with bags. But starting October 15th, the footage showed something strange. Someone who looked like Michael leaving the building. Same height, same build, same walk, wearing Michael's jacket, Michael's shoes. But the person's face was always turned away from the camera, always at an angle where you couldn't get a clear look. The figure left the building on October 23rd at 11:47 p.m., carrying a suitcase and a backpack, and never came back. Michael went through his apartment inch by inch, trying to figure out what, if anything, was taken. His electronics were still there, his valuables, his documents. Nothing seemed to be missing, except for one thing, his driver's license. Michael had left it in a drawer in his bedroom. He had a duplicate he carried with him in Seattle. The original license was gone. So was his social security card, his passport, his birth certificate, everything you'd need to steal someone's identity. The police told Michael to monitor his credit, his bank accounts, his identity, watch for any signs that someone was using his information. So far, nothing has come up. No fraudulent charges, no new accounts opened in his name, no one pretending to be Michael. At least, not in any traceable way. But Michael can't shake the feeling that Andrew, or whatever his real name is out there somewhere. Living as Michael, walking like Michael, talking like Michael, wearing Michael's clothes. Having learned, over 6 weeks in that apartment, exactly what it means to be Michael. Michael moved out of that apartment 3 months later, couldn't stand being there anymore. Before he left, he found something tucked behind the bathroom mirror, a piece of paper, written in neat handwriting. "Thank you for your life. I'll take good care of it." The police never found Andrew Chen, but 6 months later, a man matching Andrew's description, or at least the description Michael gave, was arrested in Portland, Oregon. He'd been subletting an apartment from someone who was out of town. The tenant came home early, found the man living in his apartment, wearing his clothes, sleeping in his bed. The man had a suitcase full of documents, driver's licenses, social security cards, passports, all belonging to different people, 14 different identities. When the police asked the man his name, he smiled and said, "Which one?" Michael testified at the trial, identified the man as Andrew Chen, though that wasn't his real name. His real name was Daniel Morse. He'd been doing this for years, subletting apartments, stealing identities, learning to be someone else, then moving on before anyone caught him. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. But here's the thing that keeps Michael up at night. During the trial, the defense asked Daniel why he did it. Daniel looked directly at Michael and said, "I wanted to know what it felt like to disappear, to stop being myself, to become someone else. And when you live in someone's home, wear their clothes, sleep in their bed, you start to understand them, you start to become them. And once you become them," Daniel continued, "you can make them disappear, because you're living their life better than they ever did." Michael still lives in Boston, different apartment. He changed his name legally, new social security number, new driver's license. He doesn't sublet anymore, doesn't even go on vacation for more than a few days, because he knows Daniel Morse is in prison. But he also knows there are 14 other identities out there, 14 other people Daniel learned to become. And Michael can't help but wonder, are those people still themselves? Or did Daniel successfully become them? And if he did, where are the originals? Okay, that one was heavy. Let's take a breath. We're about an hour and 35 minutes in. Next up is something shorter, about 7 minutes. A quick hit of creepiness. It's called The Fire Escape Figure, and it's going to make you want to check your windows. This one's going to be quick, but it'll stick with you. A woman named Sarah lived in Brooklyn, Williamsburg. 4th floor walk-up in one of those old brick buildings with a fire escape zigzagging down the front. Sarah's bedroom window looked out onto the fire escape. She liked it, actually. Made her feel safer knowing there was a secondary exit if she ever needed it. The window had bars on the inside, standard for New York, but they were the kind you could open in an emergency. And the fire escape itself was stable. She'd checked it when she moved in. Everything was fine for the first few months. Then, one night in October, Sarah woke up around 3 a.m. She wasn't sure why. No noise, no obvious reason. Just that feeling you get sometimes when you wake up suddenly and know something's wrong. She lay there in the dark for a minute, listening. Nothing. Then she looked toward her window. There was a man standing on the fire escape. Sarah's heart stopped. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The man was just standing there, completely still, facing her window. He was wearing dark clothes, a hoodie, maybe. His face was obscured by shadows. Sarah's bedroom was dark. Her curtains were partially open, but the lights were off. She didn't think he could see her, but he was looking right at her window, right where her bed was. She lay there, frozen, staring back at him. He didn't move, didn't shift his weight, didn't look around, just stood there. Sarah's hand slowly reached for her phone on the nightstand. She kept her eyes on the figure, terrified that any movement would alert him that she was awake. She grabbed her phone, unlocked it under the covers so the light wouldn't show, called 911, whispered to the dispatcher, "There's someone on my fire escape, outside my window. Please send police." The dispatcher asked her to stay on the line. Stay calm. Officers were on the way. Sarah kept watching the figure. He still hadn't moved. 5 minutes passed, felt like an hour. Sarah could hear sirens in the distance, getting closer. The figure on the fire escape didn't react, didn't run, just stood there. The sirens got louder. Red and blue lights flickered through the window from the street below. And then, finally, the figure moved. He took one step closer to the window. Sarah's breath caught. He raised one hand, slowly, deliberately, and pressed it against the glass. Pelmflet, fingersprid. Then he turned and climbed up the fire escape, disappeared onto the roof. The police arrived within minutes. Sarah let them in, shaking, trying to explain what she'd seen. 2 officers went up to the roof, searched the fire escape, checked the surrounding area. They found no one. No footprints on the fire escape, though it had been dry, so that wasn't surprising. No signs of forced entry anywhere in the building. But when they checked Sarah's window, the one the figure had pressed his hand against, they found something. A handprint on the inside of the glass. Sarah stared at it. That's not possible. He was outside. I saw him outside. The officers looked at each other. One of them said, "Ma'am, are you sure you were awake? Sometimes people have very vivid dreams that—" "I was awake," Sarah insisted. "I called 911. I was talking to the dispatcher. I was awake." The officers couldn't explain it. They took photos of the handprint, dusted for prints, but the pattern was too smudged to be useful. They told Sarah to keep her windows locked, call if she saw anything else suspicious. Then they left. Sarah didn't sleep the rest of that night. She sat in her living room with all the lights on, every lock checked twice. The next morning, she looked at the handprint again, in the daylight. It was definitely on the inside of the glass. There was no way it could have been made from outside. The bars would have prevented anyone from reaching the glass that way. But she'd seen him, clear as day, standing on the fire escape, pressing his hand to the glass. From the outside, Sarah called a locksmith, had additional locks installed on the window, called her landlord and asked if security cameras could be installed in the building. The landlord said no, too expensive. Sarah considered moving, but she'd just signed a year lease and couldn't afford to break it. So she stayed, and for 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then, on a Thursday night, Sarah came home from work around 7 p.m. She walked into her bedroom to change clothes and stopped. There was a handprint on the window, inside the glass, a different position than the first one, lower, like someone had crouched down and pressed their hand there. Sarah's blood ran cold. She'd locked the window that morning, double-checked it before she left for work. The window was still locked. No one had been in her apartment. Nothing else was disturbed. Just a new handprint on the inside of the glass. Sarah called the police again. Different officers came this time. They checked the apartment, checked the fire escape. Nothing. One of the officers suggested maybe Sarah had touched the window herself and forgot. "I didn't," Sarah said flatly. The officer looked uncomfortable. "Sometimes people sleepwalk. Maybe you." "I didn't touch the window." They couldn't help her. There was no crime, no break-in, no evidence of anything except handprints that could technically be explained away. Sarah was on her own. Over the next month, it kept happening. Every few days, a new handprint would appear on the inside of the window. Different positions, different sizes. Some high up, like someone tall had pressed their hand there. Some low, like someone crouching. One handprint appeared on the window while Sarah was in the shower. She came back to the bedroom 10 minutes later, and it was there, fresh. The glass was still slightly foggy where the hand had been. Sarah set up a camera, pointed it at the window, left it recording while she was at work. When she reviewed the footage, she saw nothing. Just hours of an empty room and a closed window. But when she got home, there was a new handprint. The camera hadn't caught it, or whatever was making the prints knew how to avoid being seen. Sarah's friends started to worry about her, suggested she see a therapist. Maybe the stress of living alone in the city was getting to her. Maybe she was making the handprints herself and didn't remember. Sarah knew that wasn't true, but she couldn't prove it. She started sleeping in the living room, avoided the bedroom entirely. But then the handprints started appearing on other windows. The kitchen window, the bathroom window, always on the inside, always when she wasn't looking. Sarah finally moved out in December, broke her lease, paid the penalty, moved in with a friend in Queens. Before she left, she talked to the super one last time, asked if anyone else in the building had reported anything strange. The super hesitated, then said, "The woman who lived in your apartment before you, she left after 3 months, said the same thing. Handprints on the windows." Did anyone believe her? "No," the super said quietly. "We thought she was crazy." Sarah looked into the building's history, found out it was built in 1903, standard tenement building. Lots of families lived there over the decades. In 1957, there was an incident. A man fell from the fire escape outside what is now Sarah's apartment, 4th floor. He died on impact. The man's name was Thomas Brennan. He was drunk, according to the police report, climbed out onto the fire escape in the middle of the night, lost his balance, fell, but neighbors reported something strange. They said Thomas had been acting paranoid for weeks before he died, said someone was watching him through his window, following him, leaving marks on his glass. He'd called the police multiple times. They found nothing. The night he died, Thomas climbed onto the fire escape because he said someone was inside his apartment. He was trying to escape. Sarah doesn't live in Brooklyn anymore. Moved to New Jersey. Ground floor apartment. No fire escape. But sometimes, late at night, she checks her windows. Makes sure they're locked. Makes sure there are no handprints on the inside of the glass. Because she knows now that locks don't matter. Cameras don't matter. Whatever was on that fire escape, whatever followed Thomas Brennan in 1957, and the woman before Sarah, and Sarah herself doesn't need to break in. It's already inside. It was always inside. The figure on the fire escape was just letting her know it was there. Watching, waiting, pressing its hand against the glass. From the inside. All right, deep breath. That one messes with me every time I think about it. We're almost at the 2-hour mark. Time for another substantial story about 17 minutes. This one's going to get under your skin. It's called The Doorbell Camera, and it's about a man who starts to realize he might not be alone in his own life. This story takes place in Austin, Texas, 2021. A man named Ryan lived alone in a small house in South Austin. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, nothing fancy, but it was his, and he liked the neighborhood. Ryan was a graphic designer, worked from home most days. Pretty standard routine. Wake up, make coffee, work at his desk until evening, maybe go for a run, watch TV, sleep, repeat. He wasn't paranoid, wasn't the type to worry about home security or stranger danger, but after a few packages went missing from his front porch, he decided to install a doorbell camera. One of those Ring doorbells, easy to set up, connects to your phone, sends you alerts when it detects motion. Ryan installed it on a Monday afternoon, tested it a few times, worked perfectly. He could see his entire front porch and part of the driveway. Problem solved, he thought. The first week was uneventful. Ryan got alerts when the mailman came by, when neighbors walked their dogs past his house. Normal stuff. Then, on Thursday night, he got an alert at 11:47 p.m. Motion detected at front door. Ryan was already in bed, half asleep. He grabbed his phone and opened the Ring app to check the footage. The video showed his front porch, empty, no one there. Probably a cat or something, Ryan thought. He went back to sleep. The next night, another alert. 11:47 p.m. again. Ryan checked the footage. Same thing, empty porch. He figured it was a bug. Maybe the camera's motion detection was too sensitive. He adjusted the settings and went to bed. Saturday night, another alert. 11:47 p.m. This time, Ryan sat up and watched the live feed instead of just reviewing the footage. The porch was empty, but as Ryan watched, something moved at the edge of the frame. A shadow, quick, there, and gone. Ryan's heart rate picked up. He kept watching. Nothing else moved. He reviewed the recorded footage, scrubbing through it slowly. At exactly 11:47 and 23 seconds p.m., a figure appeared at the very edge of the camera's view, just for a fraction of a second. A person, wearing dark clothes. Then they stepped back out of frame, like they were testing how close they could get without being fully visible. Ryan didn't sleep well that night. He kept checking the Ring app, watching the live feed, waiting to see if the figure would come back. They didn't. The next morning, Ryan went outside and looked around, checked his porch, his driveway, his yard. Nothing unusual, no footprints, no signs anyone had been there. But that night, Sunday, 11:47 p.m., another alert. Ryan was ready this time. He opened the app immediately, watched the live feed. A figure stepped into frame, stood at the edge of the porch, right at the boundary of the camera's view. They were wearing a dark hoodie, face obscured. Ryan's breath caught. He watched as the figure stood there for maybe 10 seconds. Then they raised one hand and waved, directly at the camera, and stepped back out of frame. Ryan called the police, showed them the footage. The officers said they'd patrol the neighborhood more frequently, but there wasn't much they could do. The person hadn't technically done anything illegal. They were on Ryan's property, but they hadn't tried to break in or damage anything. If it happens again, call us immediately, one officer said. We'll try to catch them in the act. Ryan installed a floodlight, motion activated. Figured if someone came near his porch, the sudden light would scare them off. Monday night, 11:47 p.m. alert. The floodlight triggered, lit up the entire porch. Ryan opened the app. The figure was standing there, right in the middle of the porch now, facing the camera directly. The light didn't seem to bother them at all. They stood there for exactly 1 minute. Ryan could see more details now. The hoodie was black. The person was average height. Build was hard to determine under the baggy clothes. After 1 minute, the figure turned and walked away, calmly, down the porch steps, down the driveway, and out of frame. Ryan called 911, told them someone was on his property right now. Police arrived within 10 minutes. They searched the area, found nothing, no one. This continued every night for a week. 11:47 p.m. Every single night, the figure would appear, stand on the porch, stay for exactly 1 minute, then leave. Ryan started recording every instance, saving the footage, building evidence. But the figure never did anything threatening, never tried the door, never looked in the windows, just stood there, facing the camera. The police said their hands were tied. It's trespassing, technically, but unless they try to break in or threaten you directly, it's a low-priority misdemeanor. We can't stake out your house every night. Ryan asked his neighbors if they'd seen anything. No one had. No one else had footage of the person walking down the street or approaching from any direction. It was like they appeared on Ryan's porch and then vanished. After 2 weeks of this, Ryan decided to confront the person. He set up his laptop in the living room, angled so he could see the front door. He sat there at 11:45 p.m., waiting. At 11:47, the doorbell camera sent an alert. Ryan jumped up and ran to the front door, yanked it open. The porch was empty, but the camera footage, which he checked immediately on his phone, showed the figure standing there just seconds before. They must have run the moment they heard the door opening, but Ryan hadn't heard footsteps, hadn't heard anything. The next night, Ryan tried something different. He went outside at 11:40 p.m., sat in his car in the driveway, positioned himself so he could see the front porch, but was hidden in shadow. He waited. 11:47 arrived. His phone buzzed. Alert from the Ring camera. Ryan looked at his porch. No one was there, but his phone showed the footage. The figure standing on the porch. Right now, in real time. Ryan was looking at his porch with his own eyes. It was empty, but the camera showed someone standing there. Ryan sat in his car, staring at his phone, then at his porch, then back at his phone. Empty porch, figure on camera. He got out of the car slowly, walked toward the porch. The figure in the footage didn't move, just stood there. Ryan climbed the porch steps. He was standing exactly where the camera showed the figure standing. He looked at his phone. The footage showed the figure, still there, but Ryan was alone. He waved his hand in front of the camera. On his phone, he saw his own hand move through the frame, but the figure didn't disappear. It was like they were occupying the same space, overlaid on top of each other. Ryan backed away, heart pounding, went inside, locked the door. Ryan called the Ring customer support the next day, explained the situation, said his camera must be malfunctioning, showing things that weren't there. The support rep ran diagnostics remotely, said everything looked fine, no technical issues. Could be a software glitch, they said. Try resetting the device. Ryan reset the doorbell camera, reinstalled the app, tested it multiple times. Everything worked perfectly. That night, 11:47 p.m., the figure appeared again. Ryan tried something new. He stayed inside but watched the live feed carefully. The figure stood on the porch, same as always. Then, after about 30 seconds, the figure did something different. They walked toward the door, reached out, and tried the doorknob. Ryan watched, frozen, as the doorknob in the footage turned. He looked at his actual front door, the physical doorknob. It wasn't moving, but on camera, it was turning. The door was opening. The figure stepped inside. Ryan watched his phone screen in horror as the figure walked through his living room. The camera's view only showed the porch, but the angle caught the interior of the house through the open door. The figure walked in, looked around, then turned and looked directly at the camera. For the first time, Ryan could see part of the face under the hoodie. It looked like him. Not exactly. The features were slightly off, like looking at yourself in a funhouse mirror. Similar, but wrong. The figure stood there for a moment, then walked out of frame, deeper into the house. Ryan's actual front door was closed, locked. No one had come in. But on camera, the door was open. Someone was inside. Ryan didn't know what to do. He checked his house, every room, every closet, every space someone could hide. No one was there. But when he checked the Ring footage from that night, It showed the figure walking through his house, standing in his bedroom, sitting at his desk, opening his refrigerator, all while Ryan was there, in the same room. But the camera showed the figure and Ryan separately, like two different timelines existing simultaneously. Ryan stopped sleeping, started staying at friends' houses, hotels, anywhere but his own home. But even when he wasn't there, the Ring camera sent alerts. 11:47 p.m. every night. And the footage always showed the same thing. The figure entering the house, moving through the rooms, living there. Ryan checked his house during the day. Nothing was ever disturbed, no signs of entry, everything exactly as he left it. But at night, on camera, the figure was there. Ryan became obsessed with the footage, started reviewing every second, looking for clues. That's when he noticed something. In the videos, the figure moved through the house the same way Ryan did, walked the same paths, sat in the same spots, used the same routines, made coffee the same way Ryan made coffee, sat at the desk the same way Ryan sat at the desk, even scratched their head the same way Ryan did when he was thinking. The figure wasn't just in Ryan's house. It was mimicking him, learning him. Ryan decided to test something. He went home one afternoon, did a very specific routine, made tea instead of coffee, sat on the floor instead of the couch, wrote with his left hand even though he's right-handed, things he never normally did. That night, he checked the 11:47 p.m. footage. The figure made tea, sat on the floor, wrote with their left hand. It was copying everything Ryan did, in real time, or close to it. But here's what made Ryan's blood run cold. He reviewed footage from 2 weeks earlier, before he'd done his test. In that older footage, the figure made tea, sat on the floor, wrote left-handed. 2 weeks before Ryan had done those things, the figure wasn't copying Ryan. It was doing things first, and Ryan was following. Ryan went back through all the footage, every single night, starting from the day he installed the camera. He watched his own behavior over those weeks, his routines, his patterns, and he compared them to what the figure did in the footage. The figure always did things first, minutes, hours, sometimes days before Ryan did them, changed coffee brands. The figure switched first, Ryan followed, started running at night instead of morning. The figure started first, rearranged furniture. The figure did it in the footage before Ryan did it in real life. Ryan thought he'd been making his own choices, but he'd been following a script, following the figure's movements, becoming more like them. Or they were becoming him. Or Ryan didn't know which direction it was going anymore. Ryan called a tech-savvy friend, showed him all the footage, asked if it was possible the camera was hacked, if someone was superimposing video onto the feed. His friend analyzed everything, the metadata, the file structures, the timestamps. "This is original footage," his friend said slowly. "Not edited, not manipulated. Whatever the camera is recording, it's actually seeing." "But that's impossible." "I know." Ryan made a decision. He was going to get rid of the camera, uninstall it, throw it away, pretend none of this ever happened. He went home on a Saturday afternoon, bright daylight, felt safer. He opened the Ring app one last time, checked the recent footage. The last clip was from that morning, 6:23 a.m. It showed Ryan leaving the house. But Ryan hadn't left the house that morning. He'd stayed at a hotel. He watched the clip. The figure, wearing Ryan's clothes, looking exactly like Ryan, walked out the front door, got in Ryan's car, drove away. Ryan ran to his driveway. His car was there, parked where he'd left it, but in the footage, someone who looked exactly like him had driven it away 6 hours ago. Ryan disconnected the doorbell camera that day, threw it in a dumpster 3 blocks away. He moved out of the house a week later, sold it at a loss, moved to a different city. He doesn't use any smart home devices anymore. No cameras, no voice assistants, nothing connected to the internet. Because he knows now that the camera didn't show him a stalker. It showed him himself. or a version of himself that existed slightly out of sync, slightly ahead in time, making choices before Ryan made them, living Ryan's life before Ryan lived it. And Ryan had been following along, matching the movements, becoming more like the figure, until he couldn't tell which one was real anymore. The Ryan making the choices, or the Ryan following them. Before Ryan left Austin, he did one last thing. He drove past his old house. The new owners had already moved in. He saw a doorbell camera on the front porch, a Ring camera, just like the one he'd installed. And Ryan wondered, when those new owners check their footage at 11:47 p.m., who will they see? Themselves? Or the version of themselves that's always one step ahead? The version that's already living their life, already made their choices, already became them. All right, that's a lot to process. We're at about 2 hours and 15 minutes now. Let's move into something a bit different. This next one is about 11 minutes. It's called The Elevator Passenger, and it's going to make you think twice about who you share small spaces with. This happened to a woman named Elena in Chicago. She lived in a high-rise in the Loop, one of those modern glass towers, 32 floors. Her apartment was on the 24th floor. Elena had lived there for about 6 months. Pretty standard routine. Leave for work around 8 a.m., come home around 6 p.m., take the elevator down in the morning, take it up in the evening. Normal city living. Except there was this one guy she kept seeing in the elevator. Elena first noticed him maybe 2 months into her lease. She got in the elevator on the 24th floor, pressed the button for the lobby. The elevator stopped on the 19th floor. The doors opened. A man got on, middle-aged, maybe late 40s, average height, wearing a suit. Nothing remarkable about him except for one thing. He didn't press a button, just stood there, hands folded in front of him, facing the doors. Elena thought maybe he was going to the lobby too. Sometimes people don't press the button if it's already lit. The elevator descended, stopped at a few more floors. Other people got on and off. The man never moved, never looked at anyone, just stood there. When they reached the lobby, Elena got off. The man stayed on the elevator. Elena thought it was weird, but not that weird. Maybe he forgot something. Maybe he was going back up. But then she saw him again, a few days later. Same thing. She got on the elevator on the 24th floor, going down to the lobby. The elevator stopped on the 19th floor. Same man got on. Same suit, or at least a similar suit. Didn't press a button. Just stood there. Elena got off at the lobby. The man stayed on. Over the next few weeks, Elena started to notice a pattern. Every time she took the elevator down from her apartment, the elevator would stop on the 19th floor, and the same man would get on. He never pressed a button, never got off, never spoke to anyone, just stood there for the ride. Elena mentioned it to her neighbor, a woman named Tasha who lived on the same floor. Have you ever noticed a guy who gets on the elevator at 19 and just rides it? Elena asked. Tasha thought for a moment. I don't think so. What does he look like? Elena described him. Middle-aged, average, wearing a suit. Tasha shrugged. Could be anyone. There are hundreds of people in this building. Yeah, but he's always there. Every single time I take the elevator down, and he never presses a button, never gets off. That is weird, Tasha admitted. Maybe he works security or maintenance? Elena thought about asking building management, but it felt silly. The guy wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't bothering anyone. He was just there. A few weeks later, Elena decided to pay more attention. She got on the elevator one morning, alone, pressed the lobby button. The elevator descended, past the 23rd floor, 22nd, 21st, 20th, stopped at 19. The doors opened. The man was standing there, same position as always, like he'd been waiting. He got on. Elena watched him carefully. He stood with his hands folded, faced the doors, didn't look at the buttons, didn't acknowledge Elena at all. Excuse me, Elena said. What floor are you going to? The man didn't respond, didn't even turn his head. Sir? Nothing. The elevator continued down, stopped at the 15th floor. A woman got on, pressed the button for the 8th floor. The elevator descended. The woman got off at 8. Elena and the man continued down to the lobby. Elena got off. The man stayed on the elevator. The doors closed. Elena waited in the lobby, watching the elevator indicators. The elevator went back up, stopped at 19. Elena became a little obsessed with this, started timing her elevator rides, watching the pattern. Every single time when she took the elevator down from the 24th floor, it would stop at 19. The man would get on, and he'd stay on after Elena got off at the lobby. She tried taking different elevators. The building had 4 elevator banks. Didn't matter. Whichever elevator she took, it stopped at 19. The man got on. She tried leaving at different times. Early morning, late evening, middle of the day, same result. She even tried taking the stairs one day, walked all the way down from 24 to the lobby. When she reached the lobby and looked at the elevator indicators, one of them was stopped at 19. Elena talked to Tasha about it again. "I think you should report this to building management," Tasha said. "It sounds like stalking. But how is he stalking me? He doesn't follow me. He doesn't get off the elevator. He just rides it." "Still, it's creepy," Elena agreed. She went to the building management office the next day, described the man, explained the pattern, said she felt uncomfortable. The property manager, a woman named Sandra, listened carefully, then said, "What's his apartment number?" "I don't know. He gets on at 19. Do you know his name?" "No." Sandra pulled up the building directory. "There are 12 units on the 19th floor. Can you describe him again?" Elena did. Middle-aged, average height, brown hair, usually wearing a suit. Sandra scrolled through tenant profiles, showed Elena photos from the building's records. None of them matched. "Are you sure he's a resident?" Sandra asked. I assumed so. He gets on at 19 every time." Sandra frowned. "Let me check the security footage." Sandra pulled up the security camera feeds from the 19th floor. They went through footage from the past week. Every time Elena took the elevator, the cameras should have caught the man getting on. They watched clip after clip. The elevator doors opened on the 19th floor, and no one got on. The hallway was empty, but Elena insisted. "He was there. I saw him. He was standing right in front of me in the elevator." Sandra looked uncomfortable. "Elena, I believe you're experiencing something, but the cameras show no one getting on the elevator at 19. That doesn't make sense." "I know." Elena went home, shaken, talked to Tasha, showed her the security footage Sandra had given her on a USB drive. They watched it together. Elevator doors opening on 19. Empty hallway, doors closing. "But you've seen him, right?" Elena asked desperately. "I've seen you react to something," Tasha said carefully. "When we've been in the elevator together, you look at someone. You move aside to give them space, but I don't see anyone." Elena felt her stomach drop. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist, maybe the stress of the city, the new job." I'm not imagining this, but even as Elena said it, doubt crept in. Elena decided to do one more test. She brought her phone with her the next morning, positioned it to record the elevator interior. She got on at 24, started recording. The elevator descended, stopped at 19. The doors opened. Elena looked at her phone screen, watching the live feed. The hallway was empty, but when Elena looked up, away from her phone, she saw the man standing there. He got on the elevator. Elena looked at her phone screen again. The elevator appeared empty, just Elena. But she could see him, right next to her, standing in his usual spot. She raised her phone, pointed the camera directly at where the man was standing. On screen, empty space. Elena looked with her own eyes. The man was there. Elena's hands were shaking. She looked at the man, really looked at him. He was still facing forward, hands folded, expressionless. "Who are you?" Elena whispered. For the first time, the man turned his head, looked at her. His eyes were empty, not cruel, not threatening, just nothing. like looking at a mannequin. He spoke. His voice was flat, toneless. "I'm already home." Elena felt chills run down her spine. "What?" The man pointed. "At the elevator button panel. At the button for 24. It was glowing, but Elena had pressed L for lobby. She was sure of it. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. 24th floor. Elena's floor. Elena stepped out into the hallway. Her hallway. Turned back to look at the man. He was still standing in the elevator, still looking at her. "This is your stop," he said. The doors closed. Elena stood there, breathing hard. She looked at her apartment door, 2404. She hadn't pressed 24. She knew she hadn't. But somehow, the elevator had brought her back home. Elena tried to leave again, got back in the elevator, pressed L for lobby. The elevator descended, stopped at 19. The man got on. They rode down together. Elena watched him out of the corner of her eye. When they reached the lobby, Elena got off quickly, turned to watch the elevator. The doors closed. The indicator showed the elevator going up. It stopped at 24. Elena left the building, walked around the block, tried to clear her head. When she came back an hour later, she took the stairs up to 24. She opened the stairwell door, stepped into the hallway. The elevator at the end of the hall dinged. The doors opened. The man stepped out, walked directly to Elena's apartment door, 2404. Stood there, waiting. Elena froze. The man turned his head, looked at her. "You left," he said, same flat voice. "This is my apartment." "I know. What do you want?" The man tilted his head slightly, like he was confused by the question. "I'm already home," he repeated, and then he faded. Not walked away, faded, like smoke dissipating. Gone. Elena moved out 3 weeks later. Before she left, she talked to Sandra one more time, asked about the history of apartment 2404. Sandra hesitated, then said, "A man lived there before you, for about 15 years. Lived alone, very quiet, kept to himself. What happened to him? He died. In the apartment. Heart attack. He was in the elevator when it happened, actually. The elevator stopped on 19. Someone called 911, but by the time paramedics arrived, he was gone." "What was his name?" "Martin Reese." Elena's blood ran cold. "Can I see a photo?" Sandra pulled up the old tenant file. There he was. Middle-aged, average height, brown hair, the man from the elevator. Sandra explained that Martin had lived in 2404 for 15 years, took the elevator every single day, always got on at 24, always rode down to the lobby, except for the day he died. The elevator stopped at 19. Martin had a heart attack, collapsed right there in the elevator car. He never made it to the lobby, never made it home. Elena doesn't live in that building anymore. She moved to a walk-up in Wicker Park, no elevators. But sometimes she wonders about Martin Reese, still riding that elevator, still trying to get home, stopping at 19, where his journey ended, waiting for the doors to close, for the ride to continue, pressing the button for 24, going home. Except he never gets there. He just rides, forever. And when someone lives in his old apartment, he watches them, makes sure they get home safe, makes sure they arrive at 24. Because he never did. That one always gets me. The idea of being stuck in a loop, never making it home, just waiting, forever. All right, we're at about 2 hours and 33 minutes. 2 more stories after this one. This next one is called The Lease Clause, and it's about 11 minutes. It's going to make you read your rental agreements a little more carefully. This one takes place in Denver, Colorado. A guy named Trevor moved into a new apartment in Capitol Hill. Great location, reasonable rent, recently renovated. Trevor was excited. It was his first time living alone. No roommates, no shared spaces. Just him and his 1-bedroom apartment. The lease signing was standard. 20 pages of legal jargon, pet policy, noise policy, Maintenance responsibilities. Trevor skimmed most of it, like most people do. Signed on the dotted line. Moved in on the 1st of the month. Everything was fine for the first 2 weeks. Trevor unpacked, set up his furniture, got comfortable. The apartment was perfect. Quiet neighbors, good water pressure, no complaints. Then, one night, Trevor couldn't sleep. It was around 2 a.m. He was lying in bed, scrolling through his phone, and for some reason, he decided to actually read his lease agreement. All of it. Every single clause. Most of it was standard stuff. Payment terms, utilities, rules about subletting. But on page 17, near the bottom, Trevor found something strange. Section 12, subsection F. Tenant agrees not to investigate, tamper with, or attempt to open the sealed door located in the utility closet. Any violation of this clause will result in immediate termination of lease agreement and forfeiture of security deposit. Trevor sat up in bed. Sealed door? He'd never noticed a sealed door. And he'd definitely been in the utility closet. That's where the water heater and circuit breaker were. He got out of bed and went to the closet, opened it, looked inside. Water heater on the left, circuit breaker on the right, shelves with cleaning supplies. No door. Trevor stood there, confused. Maybe the clause was left over from a previous renovation? Maybe there used to be a sealed door, but it had been removed. He went back to bed, forgot about it. The next morning, Trevor went to the utility closet to check the circuit breaker. One of his outlets wasn't working. He opened the closet and froze. There was a door on the back wall of the closet. A small door, maybe 4 feet tall, painted the same color as the wall, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. It was sealed shut with what looked like industrial caulking, heavy-duty stuff, and there were 3 deadbolts on the outside, all locked. Trevor stood there, staring. That door hadn't been there yesterday. He was sure of it. He would have noticed. Trevor backed out of the closet slowly, closed the door, tried to rationalize it. Maybe the door had always been there, and he just didn't notice because of the angle. The closet was small, easy to miss things, but 3 deadbolts, industrial caulking, that wasn't something you'd miss. Trevor called his friend Mike, asked him to come over. "I need you to look at something and tell me I'm not crazy." Mike came over an hour later. Trevor led him to the utility closet. "Do you see a door?" Trevor asked. Mike looked inside. Yeah. That little sealed door? What about it? Was it there yesterday?" "How would I know? I wasn't here yesterday." Trevor pulled out his phone. He'd taken photos when he first moved in documentation for the security deposit. He scrolled through them, found one of the utility closet. No door. He showed Mike. Mike looked at the photo, looked at the closet, back at the photo. "That's weird," Mike said slowly. "Right? Maybe the landlord installed it after you moved in? For access or something? Why would they seal it and put 3 deadbolts on it?" Mike had no answer. Trevor decided to call the building manager, a guy named Rick. "Hey Rick, quick question about my apartment. There's a sealed door in my utility closet. What's that about?" Rick was quiet for a moment. "Did you read your lease?" "Yeah, I saw the clause, but what's behind the door?" "That's not your concern. I'm living here. There's a sealed door in my apartment. I think I have a right to know." "No," Rick said firmly. "You don't. The clause is very clear. Do not investigate the door. Do not tamper with it. That's the agreement." "But, Trevor, I'm going to be straight with you. Every apartment in this building has that clause. Every tenant signs it, and every tenant who's ignored it has regretted it. Leave the door alone." Rick hung up. Trevor stood there, phone in hand, more confused and unsettled than before. Every apartment has that clause? He went online, searched for the building's name, found reviews from previous tenants. Most were normal, great location, a bit noisy, decent management. But buried in the reviews, he found a few mentions of the door. One review from 2 years ago: "Don't open the door in the utility closet. Seriously, just don't." Another from 3 years ago: "Building management threatened to evict me for asking about the sealed door. What are they hiding?" and one from 5 years ago. I lived here for 6 months. Never had a problem until I got curious about the door. Moved out the next week. Won't say why. Just trust me." Trevor knew he should leave it alone. The lease was clear. Rick's warning was clear. The reviews were clear. But he couldn't stop thinking about it. What was behind that door? Why was it sealed? Why were there 3 deadbolts on the outside? And most importantly, why did the door appear after he read the lease clause? That night, Trevor lay in bed, trying to sleep. Around 1 a.m., he heard something. A sound, faint, rhythmic, coming from the utility closet. Scratching. Trevor sat up, heart pounding. The scratching continued, soft but persistent, like fingernails on wood. He got out of bed, walked slowly to the utility closet. The scratching stopped. Trevor stood outside the closet door, listening. Silence. He reached for the doorknob, opened it slowly. The utility closet looked normal. Water heater, circuit breaker, shelves, and the sealed door. Trevor stared at it. Then, very quietly, he heard a voice from behind the sealed door. "Hello?" Trevor stumbled backward, slammed the closet door shut. His heart was racing. His hands were shaking. Someone was behind that door. Someone was in his apartment. Or not in his apartment. Behind the door. Behind the wall. He called 911. Told them someone was in his apartment. In the walls. Behind a sealed door. The dispatcher sounded confused but sent officers. 2 police officers arrived. Trevor explained the situation. Showed them the lease clause. Showed them the door. The officers looked at each other. "Sir, this door is sealed," one of them said. "No one could be behind it." I heard a voice. "Could be pipes. Sound travels weird in old buildings." It wasn't pipes. Someone said hello. The officers checked the closet, knocked on the sealed door, listened. "Nothing. There's no one there," the other officer said. "If you're concerned, you can call your landlord to have the door opened and inspected, but we can't break into your wall based on a sound." They left. Trevor was alone again. Trevor didn't sleep that night. He sat in his living room with all the lights on, listening. Around 3 a.m., the scratching started again. Then the voice. Louder this time. "Please, let me out." Trevor grabbed his phone, recorded the audio. The voice continued. "It's dark. I can't. Please, open the door." Trevor played back the recording. Silence. No voice. Just ambient noise. But he'd heard it. Clear as day. The next morning, Trevor called Rick again. "There's someone behind the sealed door." "No, there isn't. I heard them. They're asking to be let out." Rick sighed heavily. "Trevor, I told you not to investigate the door." "I didn't. I just heard. By acknowledging the door, you investigated it. That's how it works." "How? What works?" Rick was quiet for a long moment. Then, "The door isn't real." "What?" "The door isn't real," Rick repeated. "It only exists if you know about it. That's why the clause is in the lease. Most people never read it. They never know to look for the door, so they never see it. But once you know about it, once you acknowledge it, it becomes real." Trevor felt like he was losing his mind. "That doesn't make sense." "I know, but that's how it is. This building has a history. The doors are part of it. Every unit has one. Behind every sealed door is something. We don't know what. But as long as the doors stay sealed, as long as tenants don't acknowledge them, everything is fine. And if they do acknowledge them, then the thing behind the door knows you're there, and it will try to get you to open it." Trevor wanted to move out immediately, but he'd signed a lease. If he broke it, he'd lose his deposit and owe penalties. Rick told him, "Just ignore it. Don't look at the door. Don't listen to it. Pretend it doesn't exist. Eventually, it'll go dormant again." "How long?" "Depends. Could be weeks. Could be months." Trevor felt trapped. For the next week, Trevor tried to ignore the door. Didn't go into the utility closet. Tried to tune out the sounds at night. But the scratching got louder. The voice got more desperate. "Please, I've been in here so long. Just open the door. Just a little. please. Sometimes it sounded like a man, sometimes a woman, sometimes a child. Trevor started sleeping with headphones in, white noise on full blast, but he could still hear it, feel it, the presence behind the door. One night, Trevor woke up to find his utility closet door wide open. The sealed door was visible. The deadbolts were still locked, but someone had scratched something into the wood. 3 words, "Let me out," carved deep, fresh. The wood shavings were still on the floor. Trevor grabbed his keys and left. Drove to Mike's place, stayed there for 3 days. When he finally went back to his apartment with Mike in tow, the scratches on the door were gone. The utility closet looked normal, but Trevor knew the door was still there, still sealed, still waiting. Trevor lived in that apartment for the rest of his lease, 11 more months. He never opened the sealed door, but every night he heard the scratching, the voice, and every morning there were new marks on the door, words, messages, pleas, all gone by the time anyone else looked. Trevor moved out the day his lease ended, didn't renew, didn't ask for his deposit back, just left. Before he left, he looked at the rental listing for his old unit. A new tenant had already signed a lease. Trevor wondered if they'd read the clause, if they'd look for the door, if they'd hear the voice, and he wondered, what would happen if someone actually opened it? Trevor drove past the building a few months later, just curious. He saw a moving truck outside. A young couple was loading furniture, leaving. They looked exhausted, frightened. Trevor didn't stop to ask why. He already knew. All right, 2 stories left. This next one is the big one, the climax. 28 minutes of the strangest, most disturbing story I've ever researched. It's called The Building That Remembers, and I need you to buckle in for this one, because it's going to take you somewhere you won't forget. All right, this is it, the big one. This story comes from a documentary filmmaker named Rachel Kovacs. She spent 8 months investigating a building in Brooklyn. What she found, well, it defies explanation. I'm going to tell you everything exactly as she documented it. The building is located in Crown Heights. I'm not going to give you the exact address, for reasons that will become clear. It's a pre-war apartment building, constructed in 1938, 6 stories, red brick, classic New York architecture. From the outside, it looks like 1,000 other buildings in the city, but the inside is different, very different. Rachel first heard about the building in 2022. She was researching urban legends for a documentary series she was developing. Someone mentioned a building in Crown Heights where time doesn't work right. Rachel was skeptical, but intrigued. She started digging, found online forums where people discussed the building, Reddit threads, local Facebook groups. Most of it seemed like typical urban legend stuff, people exaggerating, making things up for attention. But there were consistent details across multiple accounts. The building had too many apartments. The layout didn't make sense. Hallways led to places that shouldn't exist. And all the tenants, dozens of them, claimed they moved in on the same day. August 15th, 1952. Rachel decided to visit the building, just to see it for herself. She went on a Tuesday afternoon, knocked on the front door of the first floor unit. An elderly woman answered. She looked to be in her 70s, friendly, invited Rachel in for tea. Rachel explained she was doing research on the neighborhood. Asked how long the woman had lived there. "Oh, quite a while," the woman said, smiling. "Since I moved in." "When was that?" "August 15th, 1952. Rachel felt a chill. "I'm sorry, did you say Ezerkilensazutvенкету?" "Yes, wonderful day. All of us moved in together. The building had just been renovated." Rachel did the math in her head. If this woman moved in during 1952, she'd be at least 90 years old, probably older, but she looked 70. Maybe 75 at most. "That's a long time," Rachel said carefully. "Is it?" The woman tilted her head. "I suppose so. Time moves differently here." Rachel interviewed 6 more tenants that day. Different apartments, different floors. Every single one told her the same thing. They moved in on August 15th, 1952. All of them remembered it clearly. The moving trucks, the excitement, meeting their neighbors for the first time, and all of them looked far too young to have lived there for 70 years. Rachel pulled public records for the building, property taxes, utility bills, tenant registrations. The building was constructed in 1938. That part was true. But there was no record of any renovation in 1952. No permits, no construction notices, and the tenant records were strange. According to city records, the building had 36 apartments, 6 floors, 6 apartments per floor, standard layout. But when Rachel counted the mailboxes in the lobby, there were 48. When she counted the apartment doors, there were 53. Rachel started mapping the building, sketching the layout as she walked through it. First floor, 6 apartments, 1 ampere through 1 farad, normal. Second floor, 7 apartments, 2 amperes through 2 G. Wait, Rachel counted again. 7 apartments on the second floor, but the first floor only had 6. That didn't make architectural sense. The floors should have the same layout. She went to the third floor, 8 apartments. Fourth floor, 7 apartments, but they were arranged differently. The hallway bent at odd angles. Fifth floor, 9 apartments, including 2, 5, G, and 5 hours that were located down a narrow corridor Rachel hadn't noticed before. Sixth floor, 10 apartments, and a staircase that led up to a 7th floor, but Rachel had counted from outside. The building was 6 stories tall. Rachel climbed the stairs to the 7th floor. The hallway was dimly lit, older fixtures. The wallpaper was faded, peeling in places. There were 6 apartments, 7 amperes through 7 farads. Rachel knocked on 7 amperes. An elderly man answered. Late 70s, maybe. He smiled warmly. Can I help you? Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm researching the building. Would you mind if I asked you a few questions? Of course. Come in. Rachel entered. The apartment looked frozen in time. Furniture from the 50s. A rotary phone on the wall. A small black and white TV. How long have you lived here? Rachel asked. Since August 15th, 1952, the man said. Best decision I ever made. This building, it takes care of us. What do you mean? The man gestured around. Everything we need is here. We don't have to leave. Why would we? When was the last time you left the building? The man thought for a moment. His smile faltered slightly. I'm not sure. It's been a while. Rachel interviewed 12 more tenants over the next 3 days. Different floors, different apartments. All of them had the same story. Moved in August 15th, 1952. Couldn't remember the last time they left the building. And none of them seemed to think this was strange. Rachel asked one woman, Don't you have family? Friends outside the building? The woman looked confused. Why would I need that? Everyone I need is here. But don't you go to work? Buy groceries? The building provides. What does that mean? The woman smiled. You'll see. Rachel started noticing other strange things. The building's layout changed. Not dramatically, not all at once. But if Rachel walked the same hallway twice, the doors would be in slightly different positions. An apartment that was 3D on Tuesday was 3E on Wednesday. A hallway that ended in a wall on Thursday had a door on Friday. Rachel started documenting everything with her camera. Photos, videos, measurements. When she reviewed the footage, the inconsistencies were there, clear as day, but no one in the building seemed to notice. Rachel found a basement, stairs leading down from the lobby. The basement was huge, far larger than the building's footprint should allow. It was filled with boxes, thousands of them, stacked floor to ceiling. Rachel opened one. Inside were personal belongings, clothes, photos, documents, all dated 1952. Rachel opened another box. Same thing. Belongings from 1952. She opened a dozen more. All 1952. It was like someone had packed up the lives of dozens of people, all from the same year, and stored them down here. Rachel found a ledger in the basement. A large book, handwritten entries. The first page was dated August 15th, 1952. It listed names, 48 names, with apartment numbers next to them. Thomas Brennan, Tred. Dorothy Vasquez, Pięcia. Leonard Kowalski, 7B. Rachel recognized some of the names. Tenants she'd interviewed. But here's what made her blood run cold. Next to each name was a note. Accepted, permanent residency granted. Accepted, permanent residency granted. Accepted, permanent residency granted. Every single one. Rachel brought the ledger upstairs. Found the building superintendent, an older man named Mr. Castellano. Yes, that Castellano. From the rent-controlled tenant story. Rachel showed him the ledger. What is this? Mr. Castellano's face went pale. Where did you find that? In the basement. What does permanent residency granted mean? Mr. Castellano sat down heavily, looked at Rachel for a long moment. Then he said, "This building, it's not like other buildings. I've noticed. No, I mean, it's alive, in a way. It remembers things, holds on to them. And in 1952, something happened. A moment in time got stuck." Stuck? The building was renovated in 1952, Mr. Castellano explained. Major work. New plumbing, new electrical, new everything. And on August 15th, all the new tenants moved in. 48 people, starting fresh in their new apartments. Okay, but something went wrong. With the building, with time. That day, August 15th, 1952, it never ended. The building trapped it, held on to it, and everyone who moved in that day. They're still living it. Rachel tried to process this. Are you saying the people in this building think it's still 1952? Some of them, yes. Others, they know time has passed, but they can't leave. The building won't let them. Why not? Because they accepted permanent residency. They signed the lease, and the building takes leases very seriously. Rachel thought about this. The layout keeps changing. The apartments don't make sense. Why? Mr. Castellano sighed. The building is trying to accommodate everyone who's ever lived here, everyone who's ever accepted permanent residency. It keeps adding space, more apartments, more hallways, more floors. How many people are here? I don't know anymore. Hundreds, maybe. They all moved in on August 15th, 1952, and they're all still here. Rachel didn't believe it, couldn't believe it. She went back to the tenants, asked more specific questions. What year is it? Most of them said 1952. A few said 1953, or 1955, or 1960, but none of them said anything past 1970. What's the president? Truman, one woman said. Eisenhower, another said. Kennedy, a man said sadly. Such a tragedy. But no one mentioned any president after Nixon. Rachel asked to see their apartments more carefully. The furniture was all from the 50s and 60s, the appliances, the technology, but the food in their refrigerators was fresh. The electricity worked. The water ran. Everything functioned, but it was frozen in time. Rachel decided to test something. She tried to leave the building with one of the tenants, a woman named Margaret. She'd lived in 4B since August 15th, 1952. Rachel said, "Margaret, would you like to go for a walk with me, outside?" Margaret looked confused. Outside? Yes, just around the block. Get some fresh air. Margaret's smile faltered. I'm not sure I should. Why not? The building needs me. What does that mean? Margaret couldn't explain, but when Rachel tried to lead her to the front door, Margaret became distressed, agitated, almost panicked. "I can't leave," she said, backing away. "I have to stay." I agreed to stay. Rachel let her go, didn't push. Rachel found old newspapers in the basement, dated August 1952. One headline caught her eye: "Major renovation complete at Crown Heights apartment building. Grand opening August 15th. The article described the building, the new amenities, the affordable rent, the promise of permanent, secure housing for working families. At the bottom of the article was a quote from the building's owner: "We're creating more than just housing. We're creating a community that will last forever." Rachel looked into the building's ownership records. The original owner in 1938 was a man named Samuel Houghton, the same man who built the building from the rent-controlled tenant story. Samuel Houghton died in 1951, but before he died, he'd put the building in a trust with very specific instructions. The building must remain occupied. Tenants who accept permanent residency must be cared for indefinitely. The building provides. The trust was still active, still funding the building's operations, and Mr. Castellano was the trustee. Rachel confronted Mr. Castellano again. "You knew about this. You've been maintaining this. Whatever this is." "I'm following the trust's instructions, Mr. Castellano said. Samuel Houghton wanted to create permanent housing that people would never have to leave, and he succeeded. But they're trapped. They're not trapped. They're protected. Do you know how many of them would be homeless without this building? How many would have died of old age by now? The building keeps them safe, keeps them young, keeps them home, but they don't know what year it is. They don't know what's happening in the world." "Do they need to?" Mr. Castellano asked quietly. "They're happy. They have everything they need. Isn't that enough?" Rachel spent 3 more months documenting the building, interviewing tenants, mapping the impossible layout. She found apartments that existed in multiple places at once. She found tenants who didn't remember their own pasts only the day they moved in. She found children who'd been 7 years old in 1952 and were still 7 years old now. She found photographs on walls that changed, showing different families, different moments, but always from 1952. Rachel tried to interview someone who'd moved out of the building, but she couldn't find anyone. According to records, no one had moved out since 1952. Every lease was still active. Every tenant was still listed as current, even the ones who, according to death certificates, had died. Rachel found a death certificate for a man named Arthur Pembroke, died in 1978, age 63. She found his apartment. 6D. Arthur answered the door. He looked 50, maybe 55. "Can I help you, Mr. Pembroke?" "Yes." "How long have you lived here?" "Since August 15th, 1952. Best day of my life." Rachel decided to try something drastic. She wanted to see if she could break the cycle, free someone from the building. She chose a younger tenant, a man named David who claimed to be 28, said he'd moved in at age 25. In 1952, Rachel convinced David to try to leave with her, just for an hour, just to prove he could. David agreed. He seemed curious, a little scared, but willing. They walked to the front door together. Rachel opened it. Daylight streamed in. The street was visible, cars passing, people walking. David took a step toward the door and stopped. His face went blank, his eyes unfocused. "I can't," he whispered. "Yes, you can. Just step through." "I can't. I agreed to stay. I have to stay." "David, you can leave. You're allowed to leave." But David was backing away. His expression was terrified now. "I have to stay. The building needs me. If I leave, I'll. You'll what?" David couldn't answer. He just kept backing away, into the hallway, up the stairs. Rachel followed him. "David, wait." But when she reached the second-floor landing, David was gone. She checked his apartment. Empty. She asked other tenants if they'd seen him. No one had. She checked the ledger in the basement. David's name was crossed out, with a note next to it, breach of contract, residency terminated. Rachel never saw David again. His apartment was re-rented within a week to a man who said he'd moved in on August 15th, 1952. A man who looked exactly like David. Same face, same height, same voice. But when Rachel asked his name, he said, Thomas Warren. I've lived here since 1952. Rachel stopped trying to free the tenants after that. Started to realize that maybe Mr. Castellano was right. Maybe they weren't trapped. Maybe they were protected, kept safe inside a building that had stopped time. That held on to a single perfect day, August 15th, 1952, and let its residents live there forever. Never aging, never dying, never leaving, just existing in a building that remembered them. Rachel finished her documentary. 8 months of footage, hundreds of interviews. She submitted it to film festivals, streaming platforms, networks. Everyone rejected it. Too unbelievable, they said. Obviously staged, they said. Good production value, but we can't present fiction as documentary. Rachel tried to publish articles, academic papers, anything to get the story out. No one would run it. Rachel went back to the building one last time. 6 months after she'd started her investigation, Mr. Castellano met her in the lobby. You can't tell this story, he said quietly. Why not? Because people will come. They'll investigate. They'll try to shut the building down, and if they do, all these people will have nowhere to go. They'll be thrust into a world 70 years ahead of where they left off. They'll have no identity, no records, no way to prove they exist. They'll be lost. But what they have now isn't real. Isn't it? Mr. Castellano gestured around. They have homes, community, safety. Isn't that real enough? Rachel left the building that day and never went back. She destroyed most of her footage, kept only a few files, for herself, as proof, but she never published the story. Until now. The building is still there, still standing, still occupied. If you go there, and I'm not telling you where it is, you'll see a normal pre-war building, red brick, 6 stories. But if you go inside, and if you count carefully, you'll find more apartments than there should be. More hallways, more floors. And if you talk to the tenants, they'll tell you they moved in on August 15th, 1952. All of them, still living that day, over and over, forever. Because the building remembers, and it takes care of its own. Rachel told me one more thing before we finished our interview. She said that on her last day in the building, she found a lease agreement, blank, waiting on a table in the lobby. At the top, it said, Permanent Residency Agreement, and at the bottom, a line for a signature, and a date that was already filled in, August 15th, 1952. Rachel said the pen was sitting right next to it, like the building was waiting for someone new to sign, waiting for someone to accept permanent residency, to become part of the building, forever. And you know what scares me most about this story? Rachel told me that when she left the building that final time, she felt something, a pull, like the building wanted her to stay, like it was offering her a home, a place she'd never have to leave, where she'd always be safe, always taken care of, always remembered. She said it would have been so easy to sign that lease, to accept permanent residency, to become part of the building, and she almost did. She stood there, in the lobby, holding the pen, and she thought about how tired she was, how hard it was to live in the real world, how expensive, how uncertain, how nice it would be to just stay, to let the building take care of her, forever. But then she put the pen down, and she left, and she never looked back. But she told me, sometimes, late at night, she still feels it. The pull, the building, calling to her, offering her a home, permanent residency. August 15th, 1952. Forever. That was intense. Two more stories, short ones, to bring us back down. The next one is just 6 minutes. A quick, strange encounter. It's called The Window Washer, and it's going to give you one more moment of unease before we head to the end. All right, let's bring it down a notch. This one's short, strange, and it'll stick with you in a different way. A woman named Olivia lived on the 22nd floor of a high-rise in Seattle, one of those glass towers downtown. Beautiful views of the Sound and the mountains. Olivia worked from home, spent a lot of time at her desk, which was positioned right by the window. One Tuesday morning, around 10 a.m., she was typing an email when she noticed movement outside. A window washer. He was suspended on one of those platform rigs, you know the ones. Metal frame, safety harness, suspended by cables from the roof. He was washing the windows on the floor above hers. Olivia could see him working, methodical, spraying, wiping, moving along the building's face. She went back to her work. About 20 minutes later, the window washer descended to Olivia's floor, started washing her window. Olivia looked up. The man was maybe 50 years old, wearing a blue uniform, safety goggles, gloves. He had a kind face. When he noticed Olivia watching, he smiled and waved. Olivia waved back. It was a nice moment. Small, human, two people acknowledging each other across the glass. The window washer finished her window and moved along to the next apartment. Olivia went back to work. That afternoon, Olivia had a video call with a colleague. Needed better lighting, so she moved her laptop to the kitchen, which had windows facing a different direction. While she was on the call, she noticed something outside. The window washer. He was on the platform, washing windows on the opposite side of the building. Olivia thought that was odd. She'd seen him on the south-facing side that morning. Now he was on the north-facing side. But it was a big building. Maybe he'd moved around. Maybe there was more than one window washer. She finished her call and went back to her desk. Around 5 p.m., Olivia took a break, made herself tea, walked to her bedroom to grab her phone charger. The bedroom window faced west, toward the sunset. And there, outside the window, was the window washer. Same man, same blue uniform, same kind face. He was washing the bedroom window. He saw Olivia and waved. Olivia waved back automatically, but her stomach turned. She'd seen this man on 3 different sides of the building today. That didn't make sense. The window washing platforms only traveled vertically. They couldn't move horizontally around the building. You'd need separate rigs for each side. Olivia went to her living room window, looked out. The window washer was there, on his platform, washing the window. She looked at her bedroom window. He was there too, washing, waving. Olivia felt her heart rate spike. Olivia called building management. "Hi, I have a question. Are there window washers working today?" The property manager checked. "No, we don't have anything scheduled this week." "Are you sure? There's a man outside my window right now, washing windows." "That's not possible. We use an automated system. Have for about 15 years. No human window washers." Olivia felt cold. "What do you mean, automated?" "The building has a built-in system. Robotic. Runs on a timer. Cleans the windows once a month. No people involved. But I'm looking at a person right now." Silence on the other end. Then, "What floor are you on?" 22. More silence. "I'll send someone up." Olivia waited by the window. The window washer was still there, still working. He glanced at her and waved again. Olivia didn't wave back. 20 minutes later, the building manager knocked on her door. A young guy named Marcus. Olivia let him in, led him to the window. "There," she said, pointing. "See? Window washer." Marcus looked out the window. His face went pale. "You see him?" Olivia asked. "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "I see him." They stood there, watching. The window washer finished Olivia's window, moved to the next apartment. "But you said the building uses an automated system," Olivia said. We do. So who is that? Marcus didn't answer, just kept watching. Marcus finally spoke. This has happened before. What do you mean? About 3 times over the past 5 years. Tenants report seeing a window washer. Always the same description. Blue uniform, older guy, friendly, waves at people. And when we check the cameras, there's nothing. No platform, no person, just empty air. Olivia felt dizzy. But we're both seeing him right now. I know. They watched as the window washer finished the neighboring apartment's window. Then he turned, looked directly at Olivia and Marcus, raised his hand, and waved. Both of them waved back. Then the window washer's platform began to descend, slowly, down the side of the building. Marcus and Olivia moved to different windows, tried to track him, but when the platform should have reached the ground, it just disappeared, faded out, like smoke. Marcus pulled up the building's security footage on his phone, the exterior cameras. They reviewed the footage from that day. The cameras showed the building's automated cleaning system in operation, robotic arms extending from the roof, mechanical brushes moving across the glass. No platform, no person. But Olivia and Marcus had both seen him, clear as day. Marcus told Olivia the rest of the story. Before the building installed the automated system, they used human window washers. For the first 40 years the building existed. In 2009, there was an accident. A window washer's cable snapped. He fell from the 28th floor. His name was Robert Chen. He was 53 years old, had been washing windows in Seattle for 30 years. Loved his job, always waved at the people inside, made them smile. He died on impact. Since then, Marcus said, people see him sometimes, not often, maybe once or twice a year. Always working, always smiling, always waving. Why? Olivia asked. Marcus shrugged. I don't know. Maybe he loved his job so much he never stopped. Or maybe he just wants people to know he's still here, still doing what he loved. Olivia saw the window washer 3 more times before she moved out. Always unexpected, always on different sides of the building, and every time he'd finish washing her window, look up and wave. Olivia always waved back. It didn't scare her anymore. It was just Robert, still working, still smiling, still doing his job, even though he'd been gone for 15 years. Before Olivia moved out, she asked Marcus one more question. Do you think he knows he's dead? Marcus thought about it. I don't know. Maybe not, but I think he's happy, doing what he loved, making people smile. Should we tell him that he doesn't have to keep working? Would you want to know? Marcus asked. If you died doing something you loved, would you want someone to tell you to stop? Olivia didn't have an answer. Olivia moved to a different building 6 months later. Lower floor, no view. But sometimes, when she looks out her window, she thinks about Robert, wonders if he's still out there, still washing windows, still waving at strangers, still finding joy in his work, even in death. And she hopes, wherever he is, that he's still happy, still doing what he loved. Forever. All right, one more story, the last one. It's about 12 minutes, and it's going to end on a note that'll stay with you. It's called Welcome Home, and it's about returning to a place you thought you'd left behind. A man named Daniel, 43 years old, lives in Portland now, decided to go back to his childhood apartment for the first time in 30 years. He grew up in Queens, New York, a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Astoria. His parents rented it from 1985 until 1995, when Daniel was 13. Then they moved to New Jersey. Better schools, bigger house, the usual reasons. Daniel hadn't thought about that apartment in decades, had no reason to. His parents sold the house in New Jersey years ago. He'd moved across the country, built his own life. But in 2023, Daniel was in New York for a work conference, had a free afternoon, and on impulse, he decided to take the subway to Astoria, just to see the old neighborhood, walk past the old apartment building, maybe feel nostalgic for an hour. Normal stuff. Daniel found the building easily. A 5-story walk-up on a quiet street, red brick, same as he remembered. He stood across the street, looking up at the 3rd-floor window. That had been his bedroom window. He used to sit there and watch the street, do homework, daydream. As Daniel stood there, an older woman came out of the building. She was struggling with grocery bags. Daniel, being polite, crossed the street and held the door for her. "Thank you," the woman said. "No problem. I used to live here, actually. Long time ago." The woman smiled. "Which apartment?" 3B. "Oh, that's been vacant for a while now. Would you like to see it? I'm the building manager. I could let you in for a minute if you want." Daniel hesitated. He didn't want to be weird, but the offer was there. "That would be amazing, actually, if it's not too much trouble." "No trouble at all. I'm Mary, by the way." Mary led Daniel up to the 3rd floor, pulled out a ring of keys. "We've been trying to rent it," Mary said as she unlocked the door, "but it's been sitting empty for about 6 months. Previous tenant broke their lease, said the place gave them bad vibes." She laughed. "I think they just didn't like the noise from the street." Mary opened the door. Daniel stepped inside and froze. The apartment was exactly as he remembered it. Not similar, not close, exactly the same. The same furniture, the same couch his family had owned in 1995. Same coffee table, same TV stand, the same curtains, the same rug, everything. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Is this some kind of joke?" Mary looked confused. "What do you mean?" "This furniture. This is my family's furniture, from 30 years ago." Mary looked around. "Oh, the tenant before last left some things behind. We kept them staged to help with rentals. Is it really the same stuff?" "It's not just similar," Daniel said, his voice shaking. "It's the exact same couch, same stain on the armrest, same tear in the cushion." He walked to the bookshelf. His parents' books were there, same titles, same order. He opened a drawer in the TV stand. His old Nintendo controllers were inside. "This doesn't make sense," Daniel said. "We took everything when we moved. All this furniture went to New Jersey. Some of it we still have, some we donated, but none of it should be here." Mary looked increasingly uncomfortable. Maybe the new tenant just had similar taste, or found vintage stuff that looked like yours. Daniel went to the bedroom, his old bedroom. The door was closed. He opened it slowly. Inside was his childhood bedroom, exactly as he'd left it. His posters on the wall, his bed with the same blue comforter, his desk with his old notebooks still on it, his toys on the shelf. Daniel picked up a stuffed bear from the bed, Mr. Buttons. He'd had it since he was 4. He'd taken Mr. Buttons with him when they moved. Mr. Buttons was in a box in Daniel's closet in Portland, but here was Mr. Buttons, in this apartment, looking exactly the same. "I need to leave," Daniel said. Mary nodded, looking spooked herself. "Of course, I'm sorry, I don't know how." Daniel walked quickly to the front door, stopped. There was something on the refrigerator, a piece of paper, held up by a magnet. His mother's handwriting. He walked over. "Read it. Danny, leftovers in the fridge. Heat them up if you're hungry. Dad and I will be back by 6. Do your homework. Love, Mom." Daniel's hands were shaking. "When was this written?" Mary looked at the note. I don't know. It wasn't there this morning when I checked the apartment." Daniel checked the date on his phone. Sunday, 3:47 p.m. He remembered this note. He remembered this day, November 12th, 1995, Sunday. He was 13 years old. His parents went out to run errands. Left him this note. He came home from his friend's house around 4 p.m., found the note, did his homework, ate leftovers. That was the last normal day they had in this apartment, because the next day his father got the job offer in New Jersey. 2 weeks later, they moved. "I need to go," Daniel said again. He walked to the door. Mary followed. Daniel reached for the doorknob and heard something, a sound from the hallway outside. Keys jingling, Footsteps. A woman's voice. "Danny? We're home?" Daniel's blood ran cold. That was his mother's voice. Mary looked at Daniel, terrified. Is someone else in the building? Daniel couldn't answer, couldn't move. The footsteps came closer, stopped right outside the door. A key slid into the lock. The doorknob began to turn. Daniel yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. No one there. No footsteps. No voices. Just silence. Daniel and Mary stood in the doorway, both breathing hard. "Did you hear that?" Daniel whispered. "I heard something," Mary said. "I don't know what." Daniel looked down the hallway. Both directions. Empty. He turned back to the apartment, looked inside one more time. Everything was still there. His childhood home, frozen in 1995. Waiting. Daniel left the building, didn't go back. But that night, in his hotel room, he called his mother. She was 70 now, living in Florida, retired, happy. "Mom, do you remember our apartment in Astoria?" "Of course." "Why? What happened to all our furniture when we moved?" His mother thought for a moment. "Most of it went to the new house. Some we donated, some we threw away." "Why are you asking?" "What about my stuff? From my bedroom? You took most of it with you, the important things." "Why, honey?" Daniel hesitated. "Did you ever go back, after we moved, back to the apartment?" "No. Why would I?" "No reason. Just curious." Daniel couldn't stop thinking about it. The apartment, the furniture, the note, his mother's voice in the hallway. 3 days later, after his conference ended, Daniel went back. He had to see it again, had to prove to himself it was real. He went to the building, waited until someone came out, slipped inside, climbed to the 3rd floor, stood outside apartment 3B, knocked. No answer. He tried the doorknob. It was unlocked. He pushed the door open. The apartment was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no curtains, no belongings, just bare walls and hardwood floors. Daniel walked through the rooms. His footsteps echoed. The bedroom was empty too. No bed, no toys, no posters. He checked the refrigerator. The note was gone. Everything was gone. Daniel was about to leave when he noticed something. On the wall in his old bedroom, there were marks. Height marks. The kind parents make to track their kids' growth. Daniel walked closer. There were several lines. Dates written next to them. Danny, age 5 to 1987. Danny, age 7 to 1989. Danny, age 10 to 1992. Danny, age 13 to 1995. Daniel remembered these. His father had made them every birthday. But there were more. Lines above the 1995 mark. Danny, age 16 to 1998. Danny, age 20 to 2002. Danny, age 25 to 2007. Danny, age 30 to 2012. Danny, age 35 to 2017. Danny, age 40 to 2020. Danny, age 43 to 2023. All in his father's handwriting. Heights for Danny at ages he never reached in this apartment, because he'd moved away at 13. Below the most recent mark, age 43, 2023, there was a note, fresh, written recently, in his father's handwriting. "We've been waiting for you to come home." Daniel backed away from the wall, turned, and saw something he hadn't noticed before. Handprints on the walls, dozens of them, small handprints, child-sized. His handprints, from when he was young, but they were everywhere, on every wall, fresh, like they'd just been made. And in the dust on the floor, there were footprints, small sneakers, child-sized, leading from the bedroom, through the living room, to the front door, and back again, over and over, like someone had been pacing, waiting, for years. Daniel left the apartment, ran down the stairs, out of the building. He stood on the sidewalk, breathing hard, looking up at the third-floor window. For just a moment, just a fraction of a second, he thought he saw someone in the window. A small figure, a child, himself, at age 13, standing at the window, looking down at him, waiting. Daniel never went back to that building, but sometimes, late at night, he thinks about it, about the apartment that wouldn't let him go, that kept his childhood there, preserved, perfect, waiting for him to come home. And he wonders, what would have happened if he'd stayed? If he'd closed the door behind him, sat down on that couch, picked up Mr. Buttons, become 13 again, gone back to November 12th, 1995, the last normal day, before everything changed, before he grew up, before he left. Would he have been happier there, in that frozen moment, forever? Daniel looked up the building's rental listings recently. Apartment 3B is still listed as vacant. Has been for 3 years now. The listing says, cozy, 2-bedroom, perfect for families, long-term tenants preferred. Once you move in, you'll never want to leave. And Daniel believes it, because the apartment doesn't want new tenants. It wants him. It wants Danny, age 13, November 12th, 1995. The version of himself that never left. The version that's still there, still waiting, still standing at that window, watching the street, waiting for his parents to come home, waiting to do his homework, waiting to eat leftovers, waiting to go to sleep in his own bed, in his own room, in his own home, forever, because that's what home does. It holds on to you, it remembers you, and sometimes it won't let you go, and that's it. 3 hours, 15 stories, all set in the places we call home. Apartments, buildings, hallways, doors, windows, the spaces where we live our lives, the places that hold our memories, our routines, our sense of safety, and sometimes the places that hold us. I hope these stories gave you what you were looking for. Maybe some fear, maybe some unease, maybe just something to think about while you listen to the rain. Because that's what these stories are really about, isn't it? Not the ghosts, not the impossible doors or the time loops or the figures in the windows. It's about home, about what it means to belong somewhere, about what happens when we can't leave, or won't leave, or shouldn't leave, about the question we all ask ourselves sometimes, late at night, in the dark. Am I where I'm supposed to be? Thank you for spending these 3 hours with me, in the rain, in the dark, in the space between sleep and waking. I'll be back with more stories soon, more rain, more shadows, more things that exist in the corners of our lives. Until then, stay safe. Lock your doors, check your windows, read your lease agreements carefully, and remember, home is where the heart is, but sometimes home won't let go of your heart, even when you're ready to leave. Good night. Welcome home.